to record on this computer. Okay, I think we're good on recording. Yeah. So I wanted to create this space where we could come together on a weekly basis, and certainly folks have their own stuff they've got to get done, but I think that just having something consistent at the same time, people can start to create space in their calendars and such to come in and kind of co-create here. I think that these are some of the observations that I've seen in other calls that I've been on. Let me mute everybody out here. That there's not enough co-creation going on, and so this is one of the things I want to do because I'm working on a lot of things. I built the Quantum Roundtable where I have, and I started this just late here in December. We had our first call where I've got folks that are highly expert, talents in specific areas, such as new, free energy, ancient technologies, water, air, energy, all these kind of different areas, permaculture. I'm bringing a lot of really smart people together that want to co-create into this quantum roundtable. So I'm sort of doing that at a very high level to see how we can come up with quantum solutions for humanity and Mother Nature to kind of fast forward and solve a lot of these problems that seem to be, something that's going to take forever. But a lot of this stuff is actually more simple than we realize. And I wanted to kind of bring some of the stuff that's coming from those calls into a space where we can really even just start rolling out and doing things on our own, and even, collaborating in a way that we can start to, see a lot of this stuff move forward, each of these areas move forward in our lives. And I also wanted to set the stage for us to come into this call in the coming weeks to have a group intention before we come to the call. And maybe we can even do a short meditation as we come into the call around that intention that we decide on before we come into, because that's the other thing I'd like to see on the other calls where we do the meditation with Mark and things like that. Really, we have that space and we have so many people that come to that, but we're not really using intention as we step into that meditation. It's generally each person sort of setting their own intention. And I think it's time that we co-create. And that's one of the reasons I brought this call together. And I'm glad that you guys are here to check it out. So the goal here today is really just to kind of lay some stuff out, some thoughts that I had, but really this is just an open forum. So if you guys, have a comment or a question, I've muted everybody right now just so that we don't have a bunch of noise and stuff on the recording, but, just shoot a chat in and, stop me or whatever, because that's the whole purpose. It is a co-creation space. And so if you see a topic or, an idea comes up, I don't want to miss it. Take a moment, just drop it in the chat so that we can discuss it as we're going through this. So, and really it's just like, I want to kind of and you'll see a lot of this stuff as we talk through it. It's a lot of it's overlapping. So you'll see that it's actually a lot of this can be very easy for us to really move forward in big ways, in big shifts. Whereas in the past, we've really had these linear steps that we had to take and then, you see progress and, oh, great. Now that I've gotten there, now I can start moving towards the next place. We really should be able to start moving forward dramatically and really manifesting the reality that we're after with a lot of the stuff we're talking about today. So these are some massaging of terms and things that I thought I was watching. I think it's Adriano, the woman that Pierre Sabak had on his show recently, and I highly recommend you guys check out. It's a 4-part series, and I think he's got some more content from her that he's going to release in February. Her stuff was really good, and these were things that were kind of refinement points that I thought were good to put into the space in terms of a lot of the terms that I've used in my work, both in business coaching and just in regular communication with folks, is that your attention is your currency now. Okay. So obviously we were trained to use money and this paper, fake money paper, which is really just a debt, to be our currency. But really now in this space, it's where we put our attention, because we can manifest so quickly. The currency truly is your attention. And that's obviously that's what the system's been vying for and monetizing, whether you knew it or not. They've been monetizing your attention, whether it be with advertising or your birth certificate or whatever the case may be. The fact that, if you're in the U.S., you're working hard, they're leveraging all that to make money off of your labor, your energy. And, just being attentive to that and knowing what's been going on is going to allow you to really realize how powerful your attention is as we move forward. And then looking at your intention or your willpower, that's really the compass that steers you in the right direction, right? So wanting to move and see these things play out, we can just put our intention, and our intention is so powerful, especially now with 2020 energy here. So, really understanding that that's the compass, is your intention. And then being in the heart space, or that 0 point, that term gets thrown around a lot, the 0 point or singularity, or staying in the heart space, is really the map. Okay. So, knowing where to go should come from that space. Whereas in the past, a lot of us have used the mind in our thoughts from the mind energy point, or based on, pre-programmed subconscious knowings. We've used that as the map in the past, and really, making sure that we stay in that heart space. And it's easier than ever now. So it's easy to stay in the heart space and use that as the map in which you use your compass, your intention. And then all we have to do is put our attention on that intention to see things really manifest. And nature, really, what I've boiled it down to is nature is expressing its uniqueness, which is the same uniqueness that each of us has, our unique gifts or even powers that we're going to step into that we haven't fully realized yet. And many of us are still searching for our own unique gifts that we have. And it took me a while to identify the ones that I have, and I'm still identifying them. So I think there's an opportunity for each of us to continue to identify those for ourselves. But when I really reflected on it and connected it with Mother Nature and the different, just looking at the different variations of the same type of plants, you can see that each plant has its own uniqueness. And it really was like, when I thought of it as Mother Nature, I really it connected for me to see how each of us has our own uniqueness, and until we can sort of understand our own uniqueness, we can't fully, make the best experience here, and experience this to the fullest as we come into 2020 and beyond. So kind of reflecting and getting into nature helps us, I think, identify our own unique gifts. So seeing the uniqueness of a plant separate from another plant of the same species, that reflection will help us identify our own unique gifts. And that's going to be super powerful as we move forward. And then lastly, which was really cool for me to hear her say, where she said, awareness is really the thing to focus on, like some of these other terms that have been thrown around. And again, a lot of the terms that have been tossed around are from that 3D, lower density space that we were in 2019 and before. So now that we're moving into the age of Aquarius, and we really should be simplifying all this stuff and kind of boiling it down. And I really was taken aback a little bit and excited to hear her say that awareness is the photon, it's the light. And obviously, if with some of you guys being from the juicing group, just hearing that is just like, oh, okay, this is really helping simplify things. Is that staying in the awareness is really where that light energy comes into us, where we're going to get more downloads, and we're going to, be in touch with our source self and really connect. So I just put this together, this slide, because I thought this was a great way to set the stage and keeping things simple and how we operate in this new energy, in this new space, and keeping things as simple as possible, so that, we don't get lost in the lingo or the language. We don't languish in the language, right? And I always say, I talk to a lot of people in my business coaching world, and this is one of my main statements, right? It's put your attention on your intention. And really more than ever now, this, outside of even business, that's exactly what we should be doing. And that's what I've been doing, in the background. And obviously you guys see me doing my thing, whether it be in the juicing group or Facebook groups and stuff. And actually, taking the compassionate action to set up these calls and bring us into a space where we can co-create. So this is really how simple it is. We don't really have to get caught up in a lot of, the conversations where, is this right or that right, or could I do it better this way? It's really just boils down to this. Like, what is your intention? What are you trying to do? You don't have to try and save the world. It could be just relatively small things that you're trying to accomplish in your own life. And then, understanding that your attention is the currency. And as long as you apply that attention to the intention, you're going to see that manifest really quickly now that we're here where we're at. So my personal intention, just to kind of put it into space, say it out loud, and to give you some perspective of what I'm trying to accomplish is I intend to bring unconditional love and conscious awareness to as many entrepreneurs, business owners, and other living beings as possible through my thoughts, my actions, and behaviors in each now moment, because I want everyone to grow. I want them to be protected, nourished, healed, fulfilled, and at peace in their heart now and forever. So that is why I show up and do what I do. I'm not here to impress anybody or do any of that. I'm really just here to share an unconditional love with those that are ready to resonate with it. So that's why I do what I do. Now, today, this is all just, I want to bring it back to the open forum and let you know that none of this is set in stone. It's really just a work in progress and stuff that I've come up with that, has either come to me through downloads or kind of just made sense at the time that I originally put the framework around it. But I just kind of put these 9 key areas that I think are the biggest ones that not only affect all in humanity, but generally, whether you're an individual, you're married, or you have a family, or whatever the case may be, like, these are areas, whether you realize it or not, that are probably the most important to your life in some way. And so I wanted to kind of build a framework that we could work from. And certainly there could be others that I haven't even thought of here that should be here, that are going to be no-brainers when somebody says it. So again, bring it to the table if you've got something. And really what you're going to find as we go through these 9 areas is that there's a ton of overlap in many of them, which is awesome because it just simplifies and it shows you how, these are not separate in and of themselves. Many of them obviously affect all the others, and they're pretty much intertwined completely, right? And that's the beauty of this quantum space that we're in. And it's going to make it to where it's very easy to start moving forward in a quantum way and really bringing solutions to ourselves, our families, and the people around us. And, one of the other things I say in business is small hinges move big doors, right? So we don't need to have some big project that's going to save the world or whatever. We need to be just making small changes in both behavior and the actions, the compassionate action that we're taking all the time in our day, which ultimately creates energetic wave that moves through humanity and starts the shift that we've all been looking for. So these are the 9 areas that we're going to cover, and I'm trying not to spend a ton of time and go deep in multiple hours here. I just want to roll through it and kind of set the stage, because this presentation is really just setting the stage for, like, what else can we do and how can we add to this presentation and dive into it deeper next time. And maybe we can, take one specific area and I can dive into that if there's interest in that, understanding those areas more deeply. So the air, obviously we got to breathe, right? Obviously we've talked a lot in Tribe and other places about breathing techniques, and obviously meditation plays a role in that. And so again, each of these areas, I'm just bringing together, the ideas of how do we tackle each area in a quantum way? Like, what are some small things we can be doing to make each of these 9 areas move forward in a quantum way? Like, go beyond just the traditional, like, okay, you should breathe in this technique, and these guys had breathed like this, and when you're in yoga you should breathe like that. Like, how do we just simplify it down to everyday stuff? And I'm going to give you some ideas, and I'd love to get additional ideas of any techniques or strategies you've been using in each of these areas, to where we can start implementing together and seeing results as a collective. So, one is just simply breathing every day. Like, and I have to do this for myself, even though I've actively and consciously been breathing, every day when I'm just sitting around doing work or whatever I've got to be doing. I'm consciously trying to check in with myself to say, when I breathe in, am I allowing my belly to fill up? Am I, just almost like a jolly old man, just letting my belly come out when I breathe in, right? Not just breathing in the chest and getting trapped there, because there's not much capacity with chest breathing. So I want to make sure that, like I would be in a meditative state, I would be focused deeply on my breathing, and I'm always checking in on that. So it's really important just to make sure that we're filling our belly when we take a breath in, and we're letting our belly extend out. That's the way we should be breathing, to get the most oxygen in the body. And when we're talking about breathing in and getting the most oxygen, all that is really controlling energy, right? So we are actually extracting energy from the ether, from the air. So it's more than just this idea of oxygen. Well, we can put you on oxygen and you'll survive. That's true, but there's a lot more going on in the ether that we're actually getting from. We're actually even getting water. We're getting hydration from the air. The air is actually just a vaporized form of water, and a lot of us don't realize that, right? We think it is just CO2 and oxygen, but there's a lot more going on in terms of energy that both the human body can harvest. But obviously, as we get into the energy space, there's clearly abundance of energy in the ether. So the things that I'm doing right now with air is obviously being conscious when breathing all day long, and checking in to make sure I'm always filling the belly when I'm taking a breath. But I'm starting to incorporate Wim Hof. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's well known for being able to go in cold water for long periods of time that most people would die in, and that's kind of where he's been known. But he's got some breathing techniques that are really powerful, and you can download his Wim Hof app for free, the Wim Hof Method app, and I highly recommend that you use it. It's really simple, the breathing techniques. And I'm sort of taking that quantum by using his breathing techniques with the portable structured water device. So, for you guys that have been on the call here, you've heard me talk about this device that I've been using, and I've got it here too. So if you have any questions and stuff, I can address that. But I'm actually I'm using Wim Hof's technique and breathing through that device, because again, you can structure the air, because the air is actually just a vaporized form of water. And gas is a higher state of energetics over matter. So we're going to get into that a little bit as we talk about food. But really, moving towards a state and understanding that gas in this realm is more powerful than matter as it relates to energy for the human body, and in many other cases, right? Generating energy. it's a, you know, if we can generate energy from the air as opposed from burning coal or gasoline, it's much more powerful. I mean, essentially that's what we're doing in the burning process is getting the gases from the burning so that we can use that as energy. So there's no reason we can't do that just actually directly with the air that's already there. The other thing that we can do in terms of breathing that I'm going to incorporate myself, I'm waiting on the water bong to show up, is that I've started to consume plasma GANs, and we'll talk about that in another slide a little bit more, but you may have seen me post in places talking about that. And the more I'm consuming plasma GANs every day, what I'm finding is that my desire for food, or my hunger for food, is going down slowly but surely. So, and it's because that's a gas form of energy. And so what we can do with a water bong is essentially put that plasma GANs energy water into a bong and breathe through it, right? So again, I'm taking the gas that's the energy in the GANs, and I'm breathing that in as I would with consuming the water that I'm doing now. So that's kind of, this is, you know, in the airspace. These are some of the things that I'm doing to accelerate or make quantum improvements on the air that I breathe and the energy that I can extract from the air. So before I move on to the next section, does anybody have any thoughts or questions about this particular slide or this, you know, particular section?
Of course, I have a question about the plasma GANs, but you said that you're going to talk about it in another slide. So
yeah,
I'm really
the next slide, so we'll get right into it.
I am intrigued on that one. Thank you.
Okay. Hold on just a second. Okay, so let's dive into water. So I know some of you on the call know I've been raving about structured water, and it's because I built a relationship with Clayton Knowles, who has been studying water and structured water for over 40 years. He's now 81. The guy looks like he's 60. And I've been, you know, kind of checking out the technology for about 6 to 8 months before I really dove into it. And once I did, I was just blown away by how amazing this simplicity of this technology is, and how it just ties into Mother Nature. And really what structured water is a water that's a living water. Okay, most of the waters that we're consuming these days are dead water. So whether that's through the tap or this bottled water we're buying, or whatever you, unless you're basically drinking from a stream every day, most of the water that we're consuming is dead. There's nothing living in the water. It's actually very difficult for the body to use that water to hydrate itself. And obviously much of it, depending on where you're getting it from, has contaminants or has fluoride. Obviously, if it's city water, tap water, or even the restaurants, right? It might be filtered, but they're still loaded with fluoride and many other contaminants. And, you know, these are all things that I've been, you know, focused on for a long time. Like I use the zero water filter to make sure I get my water to 0 ppm. I drink, you know, distilled water all the time for a long time, but that's also dead water. It has no life to it. Also, all these waters that we're consuming that are not only dead in terms of their ability to provide energy to the body, they hold on to the memory. Okay, so water is like a hard drive, and so it holds on to the memory of where it's been. Okay, so all this reclaimed water that we're consuming through tap, even if we're filtering it down, it's still holding on to the memories of where it's been, and some of the, just all the things that it's been a part of and things that have come into it. It's like a hard drive. It holds on to the memory of that. And so by structuring water, what it does is it's like reformatting a hard drive. And it also, that reformatting process starts to energize that water and make it a living water. And that's what for those that have done a solid food vacation and juiced a lot of fruits and vegetables, they know exactly what I'm talking about. That water in that fruit and in those vegetables is structured water. And that's a lot of where that energy you get from that is coming from, is that it's actually the living water, which makes it's much more hydrating to the body. So, right, if we're juicing all the time, we're getting lots of this living water that has tons of biophotons in it, which is the light around our cells, and that's how the cells communicate through that light. But also the nutrition and the hydration is just exponentially higher than it would be otherwise without having that juice, and really, extracting the juice, which is really where all the magic is in these fruits and vegetables. And that's because that water inside of these fruits and vegetables are structured through Mother Nature. Mother Nature goes through a process in its ability to absorb the water and the nutrients through plants, and naturally will structure that water in that process. Rainwater is generally structured. Okay, so what's happening in this device, there's no moving parts, and what he's done is just created what they call double vortex, where the water is spinning in both directions and is structuring this water. And what I've found is with the and I was structuring water with using actual frequencies, 528 hertz, which you can do too, before I had my hands on this device. But the beauty with this, and what I found, is that especially with the portable device, because they do have inline devices for your home and things like that, is that I can actually pass the water through multiple times, and the more I pass it through, the more the energy grows. And in my conversations with Clayton, who's the inventor and the creator of the structured water devices that I've been using, he has not yet found that there's a limitation on it, because it's like a scalar energy. There's no limitation on scalar energy. It really can just keep growing. And so a lot of people are using the portable, and what they do is they put a wine cork in the other end of it when it's full. And I've done this myself, and I still do this occasionally. Is what he's figured out is that if you shake that water, fill it like 3/4 way, it's probably about six, maybe 8 ounces of water. Put a wine cork in it. You sit there and shake that portable for 3 minutes. It's like passing the water through 450 times. And he's got endless testimonials of people that have used that technique to heal, various parts of their body, where they're drinking this, what we're quote unquote calling 450 water. And the energy in that water is so powerful that it just exponentially speeds up the healing process in the body. It's giving the body the light that it needs to repair the body very quickly. And people are using it topically, all kinds of things. So in general, structured water is highly impactful, and I've been using it for some time. And again, even with structured water, the first time that I got it, I was up until like 1 a.m. the first night I used it. And that's not normal for me. So, just the impact of that device alone, but how can we then take it to the next level, right? So I've been passing my juice through it. Now I'm taking structured water from juice, and I'm actually increasing the biophotonic potential even more. And you can actually feel it, which is wild, right? So even for those skeptical friends that I've had, are like, dude, this device can't create, like, I don't believe that it's really doing what you're saying it's doing. even from doing like little tap water tests and stuff like that, you can taste immediately how much more hydrating it is, how much wetter the even with a single pass through the portable, you can go from a tap water to water that is living and structured and actually providing energy for the body. So I know I went down with a lot on the structured water, but I think that's the basis of when it comes to water. That's what we need to be getting back to. That should be our baseline, is structured water. And then once you're there, then we can do so many things with that structured water. Just like I said, hey, let's take our fruit juice and put it through the structured water, the portable device, and run it through a few times, and bingo, now I've just taken that juice to the next level in terms of its capabilities of healing and bringing energetics into the body. The other thing, I do is, if I'm having a soup or something, I'll pour the soup through that, the stock or whatever. Any way that I can find. My dog drinks structured water. My tower garden has structured water in it, right? So all these areas that we use water in our life, my diffuser, I put structured water in, right? So I'm looking for ways to use structured water. My plasma GANs, I have a few of them here with me. I put structured water into to refill those every night. So that's now my new baseline, is structured water. So there's just a lot more that even can be done with that I'm working on, but that one device has been a game changer in terms of really raising the energetics and the healing power of just basic everyday water. So and again, you can use frequencies if you don't have the device or don't want to buy the device. Either way, even if you're using frequencies, you're generally going to need a Rife machine. If you're not familiar, Dr. Rife was a guy in the 1930s that figured out that you can just send frequencies into these quote unquote diseases. If you find the frequency of that disease, you can just send the same frequency back at it and it will destroy that disease. Obviously, they quickly put him out of business and ruin his life so that technology couldn't come forth. But it is now available. And I've used these devices for some time. There's one that's called Live Wires that you can see there in the picture that is relatively inexpensive. I think it was a couple $100. I can use it with my laptop or other portable devices. And then you'll see one at the bottom there, the Spooky 2, which is I think a $2,000 or $3,000 device, which is a bigger device and has some more capabilities. But at the end of the day, there's all the frequencies you need are already on YouTube, or they come with the Live Wires device, and you can structure water with 528 hertz as it relates to water. But obviously the Rife machines can also be a part of healing. Again, how you'll see a lot of this stuff cross over and come together to accomplish the same goals. So with plasma GANs, you'll see that I've ordered a pack down at the bottom left there on the slide from the Kesh Foundation. This gentleman, Kesh, has been an innovator in this space, and he's at a much higher level now. Like he's working on, big government stuff, and, who knows what he's got his hands into, but fortunately, he's made available what he's learned about the plasma GANs, which is GAN stands for gas in an atomic nano solid state. Okay, so this is where I'm talking about gas, just like you breathe in air and oxygen, much more powerful than eating, physical food to get our energy from, right? The process of extracting energy out of food that's consumed traditionally, and that's again why we're juicing to get a lot of energy, because we're removing the body's need to do all that work and waste energy in the energy extraction process. That's why juicing is closer to getting us to that gas state. And that's where you see some of these, some folks that are starting to move into breatharianism. And that's really just a very similar approach to using plasma GANs and structured water, is really trying to get to using gas different forms of gas as energy, as opposed to relying on food, which is actually a very primitive, mechanism to get energy from, this earth realm. Gas is a much easier way to do that. So basically everything that we know of is made out of plasma. Our body, everything is made out of plasma that we see in this reality. And so what's really cool about this plasma GANS energy is that it's completely endless. Like this little pack that I bought for $200, although it seems expensive, it lasts forever, right? I took those little bottles and I bought Voss bottles for a couple bucks each. And, I've got, if you see the bottom here, that's GANS. That's the plasma down at the bottom. And it's energizing this structured water that I put in here. And I'm literally just drinking, a little bit each day from each of these. This is zinc oxide GANS, and the other one here that I have, these are the two that I use the most, CO2 GANS. And again, same thing, right? You've got the GANS at the bottom here, which is actually has a energetic field around it, about a 2 foot, 18-inch to 2 foot plasma energy field that's around it, that's surrounding a torsion field that's surrounding these plasmas. And each of them can play a role in healing, but also energetics, right? So the more I consume, structure water and plasma GANS and juice, I don't really have any desire. I'm having lower and lower desires. The body's going through a transition where it doesn't really require food, and it's really not interested in consuming food. I find that a lot of my food consumption, because I do still have some solid food and cooked food meals sometimes, is very social. It's conducive to a social environment, and it makes sense for me to do that in that environment. But the body isn't really calling for that or requesting that. So there's also another, outside of Kesh, there's some other folks. And again, all these resources, happy to share links with you and stuff afterwards, or, in the chat. I can drop links when we've gotten through here. But, there's other people that have done really cool stuff with putting in mineral GANS and amino acid GANS. And you see that the Plasma Energy Solution Station vials, she's got it to where it's set up with 16 little vials that you put around a container where you just put your water in, and that field, so you never open those little vials, because the plasmic field, energizes that water to where all you have to do is keep refilling the water and consuming the water. You never actually need to open any of those vials. So that, there's a couple of solutions around GANS, and there are people that are creating their own GANS. It's really inexpensive. It's just a bit of a process. So for me, I wanted to fast forward things and start consuming GANS. I've been really impressed with what's possible, and I'm just scratching the surface right now with that. So, and then the only other thing that I wanted to address here, and again, and if you've got questions about the GANS, I'm happy to go dive into it deeper with you. There's a great guy. He goes a little deep on this stuff. And I can send you some other links where it's not so deep, but Transmutation 2020, the YouTube channel, he's unraveling a lot of this stuff. He's just, he may be too much for some people to consume, because he's going so deep into what's happening in the body, and, how it plays into the numerology and a lot of this stuff. So, but the other thing I did get a download on, which is interesting, and I'm still exploring with the Quantum Roundtable folks, is this idea of real-time desalination. So desalination is the process of taking, salt water from the ocean and creating fresh water for us to consume. And I have gotten some downloads recently that says that, really that's where we're moving to for ensuring that there's plenty of fresh water for everyone to consume, and making that viable so that we can really make a leap in humanity in terms of, keeping people hydrated and healthy. Because really a lot of the problems that come with quote unquote disease is because we're not consuming enough hydrating water, right? All this water's dead. So we drink, X amount of water, but how much of that are we actually absorbing and being able to use? And then obviously there are people in the world that don't even have access to clean water. And so desalinating water would be a huge opportunity for us to bring health into areas of the world that are faced with that challenge. So I'm just putting into the reality by saying, real-time desalination, I think, is something that is coming, that will use magnetics to help us remove some of the salt from the water so that we can get it to a level to where humans can consume that. And there's some interesting conversations even around if you were to restructure ocean water, even with the salt being in there, what plays out with structured water, and this is really one of the other cool things that I didn't mention earlier about it, is that it really doesn't matter if there's fluoride or other contaminants in structured water, because it won't harm the body if the water that it's being consumed through is structured. So that's the beauty with even this device. If you only have access, or you can only afford this device, which is a one-time purchase, it doesn't have any moving parts. So you're going to have it for life. Whereas many of us who have these, filters, we're replacing these filters every month to filter out this garbage in the water, and it gets very expensive, and it's every month. The beauty with structured water is that you can feel safe knowing that if you pass water through this device, that whatever's in that water cannot harm the body, which is a kind of a mind blower thing for a lot of people to really accept and understand. But and so that plays a role in this whole idea. Like, I posed the question to the Quantum Roundtable, well, is this idea that we can't really, this idea that having water with too much salt in it is not good for us? Is that statement even true? I mean, I've heard a lot of, as I've grown up, I've heard a lot of about that, like, somehow that the salt water is going to harm the body. It's too much salt, and that may be a true statement. But there's been some hints that, well, if you were to actually pass that salt water through a structured water device, that your body just wouldn't absorb. It only absorbs what it needs, and that's the power of structured water. Even as it relates to hydrogen, right? Because there's a lot of people running around consuming, hydrogen, breathing in hydrogen, drinking hydrogen water. And there's a lot of benefits to that, but there's also, there's extremes of anything, right? So, even if you're too alkaline, you're going to have some challenges with your body. Most of us are running around acidic, so that challenge, rarely shows up. But the same thing with hydrogen. With structured water, and that's really what's happening with structured water, is the hydrogen molecule is being adapted to make hydrogen more available from the water. The beauty is that the body just uses what it needs. So these are ideas and thoughts where I'm posing and saying, well, if we were to run it through just straight salt water from the ocean through a structured water device, or a pipe that has one on there, does it really harm the body to consume a high salt water that's been structured? It may not, right? Because the body's only going to absorb what it needs, as opposed to dehydrating the body because all that salt's coming in. So these are things that, I'm posing questions and trying to get people that are smarter than me to help me understand. But yeah, this is such a key area as it relates to energetics, healing, hydration, our ability to have maximum energy every day. Water, it plays an amazing role in that process. So any questions on water before we move on? Or plasma GANs?
No.
Okay. So we'll talk about food, energizing the body, right? So, obviously we're well aware that, for those that are on the call today, that juicing is maximum, has a huge potential for power and just energizing the body, healing, giving the body a break from, the decades of consuming solid foods. Just so many benefits that are near, opening up the consciousness, because of all the biophotons in the juice. So that to me is just a no-brainer strategy to continue to build energy and get the most from the foods that are here on Earth for us. You know, I'm still actively pursuing creating databases too of permacultures that already exist, and really trying to get my own gnosis a lot higher on how permaculture and food forest work. Because you know, even if where I think things are going, and you know, we'll talk about it here in a little bit, but you know, I think it's really important that we find ways to get better in touch with nature, and I think that can come through permaculture and really building these types of food forests, which allows us to get back to understanding how Mother Nature actually works. It's a mirror effect that humans have taken by watching Mother Nature and what it does, so that it can produce abundantly for all of us. And it might relate to actually food or medicine, right? Medicine is food and food is medicine. So permaculture and creating food forests are still an important part of my effort and what I'm trying to do to create a quantum shift in creating abundance in terms of food for everyone. Because this whole idea that there's a scarcity of food and all that, it's complete nonsense. This is just, I mean, literally at this stage, they're paying farmers not to grow in so many areas now. So the farmer has no motivation to go out and actually work his land because he's being paid not to. This is how ridiculous the whole industry has gotten. And I think it's really important that we start to get a mental shift away from thinking that the grocery store is always going to be there and, you know, there's going to be endless fresh food and everything available at the store to use, you know, the fake money to buy it with. So a part of what I'm doing is just bringing my own education up, identifying areas all over the world where these permacultures already exist, so I can try and tap into those, maybe go to some workshops, which is going to tap into our education section in this presentation, right? And just kind of like opening that door and getting more, you know, in tune with it, so I can get a gnosis for myself. Gardening, right? Just start small, right? I bought a tower garden. I live in an apartment. I used to have the houses and all that. I'm not a big fan of that anymore. So I've got a tower garden out on my patio at my apartment. I've got a picture of a tower garden there at the bottom. That was my way of, you know, my mom used to garden a lot when we were kids, and I would help with all that, and I really enjoyed that. And so, you know, I had some idea of what I'd be doing, but I really, you know, it'd been so long, I didn't really understand any of that process. And just getting a tower garden, planting those and taking care of those. I actually spray CO2 GANs on my plants now. I have structured water in my tower garden, right? So all this stuff is tying together to give me a chance to step into the food arena and not be so reliant on, you know, the big box stores long term for, you know, survival as it relates to food. The other thing that I'm finding with the consumption of plasma GANs and, you know, taking in structured water is that, you know, I'm sort of testing a theory that says, hey, well, if I'm taking in certain types of gases to get my energy, that I don't really need food, right? This is that whole idea of like breatharianism, all that. And if I can at least establish for myself that there's some truth to that, then there's a equilibrium of like, well, if humans can have abundance of energy without the consumption of food, then that actually just opens up so many new opportunities for everyone on Earth. Because if you can simply consume GANs and structure water, maybe some other things, breathing in energetics too, then we don't need to make as much money because a lot of our expenditures is on food and consumption of food. We don't need to spend all this time preparing food or even juicing, right? So juicing can be time consuming sometimes, right? So it just lessens the burden that food actually, all this cooking and prepping and washing dishes and cleaning up after and all these things that go on, is actually, it's a resource hog. We have these psychological connections with the social element of food and getting together and gathering together. But outside of that, all this time and money and energy that is wasted every day, basically just preparing and being in this mode of like, well, this is just what we have to do. It just frees you up to be able to have so much time and energy and resource, even in the terms of money, to apply to other things that you want to be doing in your experience. So that's kind of one of the theories that I have, is that I think that this gas form of energy, which is a biophotonic energy, it's a quantum energy. It's really the true energy of the body and always has been. We've just been extracting very small amounts of it from cooked foods, and then a little bit more from vegetables. And people are waking up to how powerful fruit is, and it's because of the biophoton. So I'm testing. I'm a little scientist all the time. I'm always testing these theories, but that's a theory that seems to be playing out for me, because even myself, I'm not consuming nearly as much food as I was before I started Plasma GANS. And even more so when I first started with Structure Water, I immediately felt the energy high enough. I felt great. Even I'm working out. I go running. I sometimes do yoga. I lift weights a couple times a week usually. I feel great. I feel amazing. It's not like I'm, in a fasted state when I consume this stuff. In many cases, I'm finding that it's not until about 3 o'clock in the day to where I'm like, my body's saying, no, you need to eat something, or you need to, get a juice, or you need to do something, because I need something more than you've given me till now. So, and I got a question here on what is GANS. GANS is it stands for gas in atomic nanosolid state. Okay, so basically this at the bottom here, these are GANs. Okay, this is the nano solid state of the gas. So these gases are permeating through this water in this jar, and I just use a little 30 milliliter syringe at the top, because I don't want to disturb, and the only time that I disturb this GANS, which is the gas in a nano solid state, is when I'm refilling at night. When I top these off, I want to shake these up and get that water that I just put in there to be energetically stimulated by the GANs. So that field goes into the water. So by morning, when I'm taking my next round of GANs, the GANs have settled back down at the bottom, but all the water in that jar has been, has the plasma in it, has the biophotonic energy in it. So that's really, any thoughts and questions around food? I mean, I think the big one for me, as you might be dropping something in the chat, is like, if just think about a day that you're not in a fasted state, like being, doing water fasts, and those can be stressful, right? They're very healing to the body, but they can be stressful, because switching from consuming, even if you're on juice, to going to just water, or even dry fasting, where you're not consuming anything at all, can be a very big stress on the body. But imagine a day where you can actually have the energy you would otherwise while you're juicing, have that energy without actually needing to consume food. What would be possible with your day? That's the seed I want to plant on that.
Yeah, Justin?
Yes.
Yeah, can I just add something on that?
Please.
So actually, today is like I'm on the 3rd day on my water fast. Yeah, and I missed the part where you were talking about water. So I just came in when you were talking about like the structured water. So I don't know how much information that I've missed prior to this.
Yeah, I mean, you missed quite a bit, and this is being recorded so you can watch it. But really, this structured water device that I've identified and there may be a few others out there, but I just haven't seen it. It was created by a guy named Clayton Nolt, and he's now kind of a mentor. He's a member of the Quantum Roundtable that I created. The guy's studied water for 40 years. He worked for the government and a lot of other stuff. But basically, structured water is living water. It's the same water that we're getting from, fruits and vegetables when we juice them. That's structured water. It's alive. It's full of biophotons. It's a blank slate, meaning water is like a hard drive. It can hold on to memories of where it's been. And by structuring the water, you're removing all that memory, because that memory is coming into your body. That's an energetic thing that's flowing into you when you consume water. Because like I was telling the group here that, I spent a lot of time consuming a lot of distilled water. So even though I got the water down to 0 parts per million and it's considered distilled, the water itself is dead. It's not providing any actual life to my body. It might be,
it's nothing in it, right?
Right. There's just no energy in it. So just simply passing even tap water through this structured water device that I have here, it energizes the water. It sets it back to 0. It makes it living water. And the beauty with this device is that you can pass water through over and over again and keep increasing the energetics of the water. And now I'm doing that with juice, right? So juice obviously is already structured, already has lots of biophotons in it. But the beauty of this device is that the more times I pass the juice through, the more energy gets built. It's endless. There are people that, customers of his that, and I've tested some of this, and I've got, there's other, Eli has also tested this using this device, one of the tribe members. And basically we've put pumps that just pump water over and over through this, and people are, taking baths in this water, and it's like going and getting a massage.
So how much does that cost?
Retail is $350. You can use my coupon Illuminate and get another 30% off. So it's about $250. Excuse me.
Cool.
And again, there's no moving parts, so it lasts forever, and you can take it with you. And I use it for everything. My dog drinks structured water now. My tower garden's full of structured water. So highly recommend that, because it's just so versatile, and you can use it 1,000 different ways.
Cool.
The other thing that's super cool about this that I didn't mention earlier is that, excuse me, my throat is super dry. Is that you can take you can put structured water in a little spray bottle. You've seen these little, vials that you can buy with a spray top. And the beauty is that you can just spray into, let's just say you're at a restaurant, you have that thing in your purse, you take it with you. You can just take that and spray it inside of your tap water or whatever at your restaurant that they're giving you. And it will structure the entire glass of water. So it isn't like you have to pass all the water through the device. There are people that are pouring gallons of structured water into lakes and restructuring the entire lake over time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and how long does it take, like, let's say, in terms of the spraying, how long does it take for the water to actually get structured? So in other words, how long do you wait before actually drinking the water?
Yeah. So in terms of how many, almost like how many vortexes does it need to go through? That's kind of what you're saying, right? Is like you'll see that this is a pretty small device, right? So in terms of it, if water was going through a stream in nature, it really doesn't take much. It doesn't take many areas of having those little rocks where it's passing through to restructure the water. So you can imagine, water that's coming through a stream that's been passing through all kinds of rocks, and it continues to flow, right? It's moving quickly. The quicker that water's moving and the more rocks you can see in that river, that the energy in that water is probably outrageous, right? And I've experienced that for myself. I've been on fishing trips and done a lot of stuff in my life where I grew up in the South in Atlanta, Georgia, there's a lot of rivers and stuff, and I've drank that water. I mean, back then you didn't even think about it. You just went down and you drank the water, and it was just like, I mean, I didn't know at the time what the heck was going on, but that water was just delicious. Your body was just like, wow, that's so hydrating. And it just feels amazing. And it's likely because it's highly structured and very, hydrating, and then obviously has all the biophotonic. So I think a lot of that idea of like, well, you can spray a glass of water and get it to be restructured, or you can pour a gallon of water into a lake and over time it's going to be restructured. I think a lot of it has to do with that plasmic field that's coming from the biophotons in the water. So it all kind of like is connected with plasma GANs, and it's really about the biophotons and how that field, as you're pouring a gallon of water into a giant lake, how many times you have to do that to where that field expands through the whole lake. That's kind of what's playing out when you spray the top of a glass of water with structured water. It's just a mist, but that mist has such a energetic field around it, a torsion field, essentially is what they call it, or a torus field or a torsion field. That's how all this stuff works. And we have a field around our body, right? And as we consume the juice and all this stuff, I mean, I've noticed too, like just in the last 2 weeks, little children and animals, like I've always had a connection with children and animals. They probably pick up on my aura, but it's been elevated. Like I'll just walk by somebody who I'm not even paying attention to, and they're walking their dog, and their dog is like turning around as I walk by, like wanting to come to me, and I'm not even looking at the dog or whatever, right? So there's clearly some energetics playing out even with my body that, these, whether it be children or animals that are very tapped, even squirrels and rabbits, when I'm out and about, like going on my hikes or whatever the case may be, like generally they would, unlike most people where they just like take off immediately. In the past, they'd be like, okay, I'm a little more comfortable, but I'm still going to go up this tree because I don't know what this guy's about. Now I'm like literally walking right next to them, and they're just like, oh, he's cool. They're just hanging out. It's like, oh, what's happening here? And I'm sure some of that's playing out just with this, energetic changes in 2020 here, right? Age of Aquarius stuff. But I mean, I'm seeing this whole thing in terms of energetics really accelerating with myself simply by consuming plasma GANs and juice and stuff on a regular basis.
Last question on this topic. Is there a way to actually like measure the change in the water? Like what device do you use to measure that?
There are. So yes, I would say that it's not very practical. Okay. So there are, you can Google this. There are biophoton analyzers. So that's really the measurement. And that's been the trouble, in talking with Clayton, cause I looked at, cause I have an interest in a water softener company, that I'm starting to I've been working with for about a year now to grow that business. And one of the things that our challenges is that we can't really, because we sell water softeners, which are generally bought by homeowners, there's a huge market of people that rent homes or rent apartments or condos or whatever the case may be, that we don't really have products to serve them. And so that was one of the reasons I had looked into structured water, because I was like, well, maybe they can use some of these structured water devices and get some great benefit. That's kind of how I got deeper into the topic. And that's in talking with Clayton, that's been one of his challenges, because I was looking at all the people that sell his product, all these little dealers in local areas, and they're all like little healing centers and very, people that are tapped into energetics, Reiki people, and those are the kind of people that have been selling his product, because until you really use it and experience for yourself, the feeling and the taste and everything, and how just simply passing even tap water through this device one time makes a tremendous difference in how you feel. It's hard to really get it to the masses to say, this is an amazing thing that you don't realize. And they're looking for PPM devices and all these other things that have been created, right?
Because I'll be like the first thing that I'll do, like put it through this PPM device and like measure the orbs and all the stuff with it.
Yeah, and some of that stuff you may not change, because what's happening is that a lot of these measuring devices are at the material plane. They're measuring the materialism of that state of the in this case the water, right? But what's happening with this water is at a much higher state. It's at a energetic and gas state. It's at a biophotonic state, which you can't see. You know, it's harder to measure unless you've got the money to buy these biophoton analyzers. Most people don't, and nor is that practical anyway. It's more about, you just have to experience it and use it yourself and see for yourself that, hey, as I continue to keep passing liquid through this, I can actually taste and feel. I mean, I took it to Idaho, and that's where I got this little cold, because I didn't get much sun. I'm a California boy, so I'm used to getting a lot of sun. I took it to my mother and my sister, and they were just blown away. Their heads were like, which is what I experienced when I first started consuming it. You get this buzz around on your head. Your head is buzzing when you first consume it. I mean, imagine a body that's never really had structured water, something with energetics, and now you're consuming it. I mean, some of that feeling comes from juicing, right? For those of us that have juiced or even water fast, you kind of get to that place. But even with a water fast that I've done, I've never felt like that before, where things in my head and my brain were like, something's going on here, right? And that's what you experience with the device, but that's hard to sell through the internet, right?
And like that experience, is it like directly or like after 2 days or like?
Oh no, it's immediate.
Oh, like when you drink it directly, immediately you start experiencing something like that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, the first taste, you get it, and then if as I was saying earlier, if you put a wine cork, if you fill this up 3/4 of the way, you put a wine cork at the top, you shake this for 3 minutes, that's considered 450 passes back and forth. And you drink that 6 to 8 ounces of water, you're gonna know what's really going on. I mean, it's gonna blow your mind. So yeah,
Cool.
that's what's going on with structured water.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for your thoughts. Speaking of thoughts, so
I have a quick question on that.
Yeah, bring it on.
So with structured water, it doesn't necessarily. Let me know. Does it clean the water, or is the water like not clean, or how does that work?
Yeah. So this is where that fuzzy area comes in. Okay. So what's happening is that this is not a filter. Okay. This is not filtering anything, but so your traditional devices, your ppm devices or whatever, although they may change slightly after you pass it through here, in terms of the material plane, those components are still in the water. But what's happening is that because you structure the water, the body is only going to use what it needs that's in that water. So if there are contaminants, fluoride, all these other things that are in that structured water, the body will just pass it through. It will not harm the body. Whereas if you were to drink that stuff in dead water, then the body does absorb those components and has to process them. So this is that moving into an energetic and a gas state from the material plane, where if you use devices and measuring devices and things, alkaline strips, things like that, to measure pH or parts per million or whatever else you're using, it won't look much different. It will change slightly, but it will look like those things are still in the water. And that's correct, because what's happening here is that we're working with the water at a much higher level in terms of alchemy, on the energetics and in the gases and energetics level of the water. So those components that traditionally we understand that would harm the body actually don't harm the body at all.
And so would this be more recommended for someone who already is on the path of mindful eating and mindful thinking, as opposed to someone who may not be?
Well, I'm not sure how you're positioning that question, I think it's a no-brainer for someone that's heard me talk about this and understands even some element of this to, you know, if you're local to me, get with me and we'll meet up and I'll show you the power of this device. If you're not, and you've got the money to spare, this investment is the best money you'll ever spend in your life. And for those that are still sort of figuring out all this stuff, if they can get the gnosis of what this can do, and many of these people, and I say these people, I mean, I'm included. I've spent a fortune on water filters and replacing filters, and I think even basic people are going out and carrying these giant water jugs so their family doesn't have to drink tap water, right? They're already investing time and money and lifting these bottles and replacing them, and all this stuff is going on in the, throughout even the folks that aren't mindfully consuming. They're at least consuming mindfully at some level on water. And so, even having that conversation with people is a very easy one to have. And because you can, take a glass of tap water, pass it through this device one time, and they immediately taste a difference, you've got their attention, right? So the beauty is that, even if you're not mindful about what you're eating in the food realm, most people are at least somewhat knowledgeable about the fact that drinking water from different sources, has an impact on the health of your family and stuff. So the beauty is that someone that even eats garbage, if they start drinking this water, that's going to change their thoughts. It's going to change how they feel. It's going to change. So they could be, really make a quantum shift, as most people are at the beginning of the year, trying to make resolutions and do things better and eat better and all that. And obviously you got the big vegan movement and all that stuff going on right now. So the energetics in the space in general is so much aligned with, getting people to see this opportunity for themselves and see how it actually could save them money in cutting out and hauling all this water all over the place. And it's nonsense, the money that we spend on more dead water, all these Culligans and all this stuff. This is just garbage water that we're paying for premiums for,
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
I hope I answered your question with that.
Yeah, you did. Thank you.
So the thoughts, right? We're already tapped into this, but when you can start breathing better air and, taking better breaths and start consuming extremely energetic water and consuming foods and doing the juicing, right? You can just see how the thoughts roll into this and how all this is so integrated. So the thoughts of, what are we thinking about every day? What are we observing? What's our perception of the world? As we see this whole right now we're seeing this spectrum of duality really playing out. You're going to see, the extremes where a lot of us are like in a bliss state and seeing what's amazingly possible and just enjoying the experience and getting into nature and taking the time to focus on the things that make us feel great. But at the other end of the spectrum, you're seeing the world, you're seeing volcanoes, you're seeing earthquakes, you're seeing floods, you're seeing protests, you're seeing war, you're seeing all kinds of, you're just seeing the full spectrum of the duality playing out in 2020 as we move into the age of Aquarius. Like there's still a lot of energies that have to be purged in the collective consciousness. And, we've got to stay outside of all that and stay in observation and keep focused on the compassionate actions that we can take in our own life to live the experience here on New Earth that we want to see. New Earth actually is already here. We just have to step into that frequency and that vibration, and it comes from all these different areas we're talking about today through, the air, the water, the food, our thoughts, education, healing, all this stuff plays into that, getting into that New Earth frequency so that we can step into the reality we want to see very quickly through these quantum, thoughts essentially that we have, where we might still have these emotions that play out sometimes, things that trigger us, but we've got to see that that's just, we're wasting energy in motion, right? We're wasting that energy getting caught up in that, where we want to stay in those loving, unconditional love, bliss state, joy state, energetics. And this isn't about kumbaya and everything's beautiful. It's about just holding your space, that heart space, and having a gnosis that, yeah, we're going to see a lot of crazy stuff play out in the coming months, but that's not for me to get involved with, right? That needs to happen for all of us, but that's not for me to get entangled with. I've got other things I'm working on that actually is going to make a bigger impact than standing in the streets protesting about something that probably has, again, there's no right or wrong here. It's all spectrum of the polarity within duality. So I want to stay in that neutrality state. And the way to do that very easily is through our thoughts and staying focused on the things that we want to accomplish so that we can align our frequency and vibration with New Earth and the age of Aquarius. So, really for me, like, I don't meditate nearly as much as I used to meditate. And it's because I really feel like, because I'm in the heart space and I'm focused on my breathing and I've got the consumption of water and these things, I'm actively taking compassionate action around all these areas of my life. Because I feel like I'm kind of always in a meditative state now. It's kind of hard to explain because, when you go into a meditative state, you're sort of trying to escape the reality so you can kind of focus and tap into that source self within you to find that vibration that's always there that gets distorted by the reality. But there's an opportunity to start raising your energy, your vibration, your frequency, and in that heart space to where, you're in a meditative state all the time. You don't really need to escape into these sessions. Now, those sessions, even when done briefly, 15 minutes, can be extremely powerful because you can get some new downloads. You can really completely shut down the distortion in this realm to go a little bit deeper, maybe farther and deeper than you have before. But what's exciting, it has been exciting for me for the last few months, is that I actually haven't done a lot of meditation as we would traditionally know it. I've been relatively feeling in a meditative state, which doesn't feel like I need to go into those sessions. I'll spend that time in my sauna, or I'll spend that time on the yoga mat, or I'll go to the gym, or I'll take a run in the sun, or I'll go, do some grounding, and do some sun gazing, whatever it is, right? I can, it's an interesting thing that's played out for me. And I'm hearing that other people are having that same experience where they may have been, traditionally very active in meditating at least a couple times a week or whatever, and they're not really even having that urge, and they're using that time and resource for other things because they feel like they're constantly in a meditative state. So that's, and then I think this is a place, just to touch on it, as I spoke about earlier, you got to really try and continue to tap in and find your unique gifts. And they're going to show themselves more to you now that we're in this new age of Aquarius energy. So, being able to identify that is basically this idea of like, you're a superhero with powers. It's those powers are coming through your unique gifts. So, looking back and reflecting on times when you've had so much joy and other people were like, wow, that was amazing, you did that, or, really resonating into that space of like, what are some of your unique gifts, and practicing those and testing to see, are those unique gifts of mine? If I do those, do I feel in a bliss state? Like this stuff I'm doing here with you guys today. I know this is probably running longer than most of you expected, but for me, this is like time hasn't even moved. I mean, I could sit here and talk about this stuff all day long because it's what's in my heart. It's what I'm passionate about. It's part of, my unique gifts to bring some of these quantum solutions. That's my Jupiter Capricorn energy rolling out here. And, it's what I love doing. So it's definitely something that is a unique gift of mine to kind of have this ability to bring some of this stuff that seems generally would be very compartmentalized. You'd have a practitioner talking about, your emotions and meditation. You'd have another person talking about food, and another person talking about water, you know what I mean? So that's a part of my unique gifts, to bring some of this stuff together so we can explore it and co-create around it. So that's all I have for this particular topic. Any thoughts or ideas around this and how to kind of take thoughts and this whole mind over matter idea to a quantum level for yourself? Are you experiencing any of this, sort of meditative state all the time for yourself?
I
Yeah.
know. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I know over this past week since the new year has begun, and probably like a couple days prior to that, my thoughts have been manifesting very rapidly. I want to say, well, like the eve before New Year's, where I was processing some things and I was thinking about just like letting go some certain things, and right maybe if not an hour later, I received a text message that was revolving around that thought. And then right after New Year's, I was thinking about another thought, and I just got a call from this person that I hadn't spoken to in over a year, or almost a year. And so I've been in just a lot of stuff has been coming very rapidly. So I've been really feeling the effects of my thoughts, in my inner thoughts, just not even like what I'm talking about with anyone, and how rapidly they have been manifesting. So I have definitely been feeling the effects of how mindfulness can really manifest itself in the age of Aquarius.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yeah. One thing I didn't mention is just like, although I'm taking compassionate action, I'm doing stuff all the time. It's coming from a state of being. Like the doing comes from the state of being, rather than, I think we've been what I call human doings for a long time instead of human beings. It's like we've been running around doing all this stuff, and 2019 was even a year of that, where we're still like, oh, I need to go do all this, right? I need to do this. I need to do that. I mean, now I kind of just operate in a state of being, and the doing comes from that because I have things I want to accomplish and I want to move forward in that state of being,
Yeah, I just had a question in regards to unique gifts.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you guys, let me say, connect all these steps like emotions and the perception that you're having through your observation and the meditations to actually like unlocking your unique gifts?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good question.
I assume that for everybody it's a little bit different.
Yeah. In my experience, what happened with me, this was probably early 2019. I was kind of tapping into that idea of, well, what are my unique gifts? And I just did a lot of reflection on the things I was doing when I felt joyful and blissful, just like this moment here where I'm with you guys. Like, this is what I enjoy doing. And I, in my case, I was running many years ago, and this is the thing that really helped me step into one of my unique gifts, was that I was running an advertising agency. We actually did, at the time, we were doing a lot of search engine optimization so people could rank really well in Google for, their keywords. And one of the things I would do I would just take calls from all these different business owners who, even, the information they provided before the call, I knew going into that call, I couldn't help them. They weren't ready for what services I had available to them. They had other business issues or whatever. But what I found was that, and as I reflected back to those days where I was just taking endless calls, I could have been doing other things with the business to grow the business. And I could have rejected those calls knowing that I couldn't help them. But one of my unique gifts is helping business owners, to guide them, to coach them through the challenges, because I've done it 1,000 times over. So for me, it's like second nature, and I already see the problems before they're going to show up. And obviously now with the understanding that I have now, I can help them at a much deeper level than I could even in those days, with their own personal energetics and manifestation. But what I realized was, like, I was having so much fun on those calls because that was what uh, that was a reflection of my unique gift, which was to connect with other people, in that case, specifically business owners, that, kind of, and I have a lot of marketing and advertising skills. So I could really bring a lot of value to them. And it wasn't really trying to sell them search engine optimization services that brought me joy. It was helping them get through some of the challenges they were facing in their business. And that was where I kind of really fully stepped into this unique gift of, hey, I should be coaching businesses. And I had done some of that in the past. I'd done some consulting. I had huge success, but I hadn't, it wasn't until, early 2019, maybe late 2018, to where I really stepped into it and realized, wow, all those calls that I was doing, it wasn't really, even though I was able to help a small percentage of those business owners with search engine optimization, it's because I was acting out my unique gift. I just didn't realize it. It's because I enjoy doing calls and connecting with people at that level. The door I can open, my Jupiter Capricorn energy was using business to open a door through the conversation of business to connect with that individual on a deep level. And that's one of my unique gifts. So a lot of it for me with identifying, it's reflecting on those moments in time when in the past, when you did have that blissful state and there were things you were doing that actually you saw seemed to be adding value to your life or other people's lives. Generally, that's how I found my own unique gifts. And I'm still finding more of them showing up, especially in this new energy. So.
Thank you for sharing. Very nice.
Yeah. It was a process for me, but I do think it's going to be easier for folks to find them, and I wouldn't try too hard. It's just be consciously aware that we all have unique gifts and we should be exploring those,
Yeah, for me, I'm a little bit aware of this because actually, being within this space of consciousness and spirituality and like self-elevation and self-growth, has always been like a challenge due to the nature of our environment. Like
Sure.
coming from a Christianity environment, and also like not being able to have your questions answered within your friends and things like that, like has just kept me like in a cocoon. But like growing and coming like over here in Europe, and also like coming then across people like Savan and Ralph Smart and like all this consciousness people who are like loud with it, has also allowed me to like be more like proud of how I used to be when I was a kid, and like be more like go just deeper into the rabbit hole, and just to find like, hey, I'm not crazy, So in respects to that, I would say like for my personal unique gifts, being aware of self-elevation and also just exploring the realm of wanting to elevate self. This is something that I enjoy doing. This is something that I want to spend like, let me say, 80% of my life doing. But of course, also helping others who are also like, let me see, other reflections of me who are like in the same space that I was before coming to this full realization, like helping them as well in their own journey in discovering self, because it's not because you see something a certain way that will automatically mean that everybody is on that frequency. So I'm also very grateful the fact that it took me maybe 1 or 2 years to just realize what I just said. But because something like that, it can save you a lot of pain and a lot of struggle. So it took me like 1 or 2 years to actually really, really realize that and understand that. So I was just curious for other people how their journey were, because it's like a mirror, as I said, like to reflect and just see like, okay, is this something that is just like unique to that person, or is it something that can be reflected to other people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I think in terms of the process, I think we've all had our own version of, you know, being in that cocoon and being like, this world is a disaster, and you know, trying to kind of still operate through the ego and the personalities that you've had while you're making that transition. And then there was a time for me where I just got to a place where I'm just like, fuck it, I don't really care what people think. You know, this is just who I am, and you know, I don't really care about the ego anymore or any of these things that used to be, you know, the construction of my life that I thought was necessary, that I was playing a role in. And so, yeah, I think we've all had our own version of, you know, kind of feeling stuck in that cocoon and coming
Yeah.
out.
Can I ask you a question? Like, how did you, like, let me say, detect the ego and deal with it? Because that, I think, for me personally, that's also a space where I'm still like working on. Like there are some times that I can like just detect myself like just being balanced about a certain situations, but other times before I detect or I come back to that space of balance, well, I've actually just been operating through a space of ego, you know. So how do you deal with that in like working with the ego to make sure that you're not always caught up within the ego, and like you can just always act or just be in a balanced state?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's definitely a process. I think the biggest thing for me, because you know the ego is based in the subconscious, and the ego is trying to protect those subconscious beliefs, and so it's a very natural process for the ego. You know, we've kind of demified the ego, but it was there to serve you, to protect you from, you know, really just collapsing in that old 3D energy. Because if some of the things that you know now had come into light many years ago for you, you know, many people would have taken their lives, committed suicide, like done some really some things to harm themselves and harm others in ways that, you know, so the ego has played a role to support you through this process. But there's a time once you, you know, are mature enough to understand how the ego works and how the subconscious programming works, and you're starting to unwind some of that programming and put in your own new programming that's heartfelt and not something that just somebody else, you know, told you to believe. Then you can start to identify when the ego is showing itself. The way that I've done that is, you know, whether it's on the element of like giving you that anxiety or fear, or the other side of the spectrum where you're sort of feeling prideful and, you know, creating some sort of energetic like betterness than others in a situation. And all this can play out in microseconds sometimes when you're engaging with others, or you know, you're driving down the road and you're dealing with somebody that's trying to cut you off and stuff like that.
Exactly.
That's when you have to observe it and say, it, like, all that doesn't serve me. And that's when you kind of consciously observe it, and then you let those emotions pass and get back to the heartfelt space. That's a reprogramming process of the subconscious, so that the ego doesn't no longer need to be there to try and protect you. So I think that it's important that we see the ego as a integral part of the psyche of being a human being. And it actually plays a very important role to protect the subconscious and the, you know, the way that you think until you're mature enough to manage those thoughts on your own. And so, as opposed to demonizing completely the ego, and some people need that demonization to make that break, right? When they're stuck in this old 3D, that's wrong and I'm right, and all this kind of stuff, all these conversations. And that person's a bad person and I'm a good person. Like that's all ego speak. And some people need that, like, to realize, hey, the ego is just completely blocking your ability to move forward in life. That demonization conversation about the ego can be a helpful tool, but I think overall we have to see the ego as something that has been there to help us in this process of awakening.
Thank you for sharing.
And the sooner we can kind of see it that way, the sooner we stay in the heart space and it doesn't show itself. Because now we just realize, like, hey, the ego isn't something bad. It was there to serve me, and it will continue to serve me where it thinks it needs to. And it's not until I resolve that, programming that's been that plays out in these little emotions that I might get here and there, that it will eventually dissipate, and it will only show up when, I definitely need it. So let's talk a little bit about healing. And I think this is one of the things that challenges a lot of folks that have a ton of potential, have a ton of unique gifts to bring. But if they're not in 100%, in the physical body, emotional body, spiritual body, if they're not tapped in and got that trinity going, physical, spiritual, mental, then they're basically not at full capacity, right? To their full potential. They're not experiencing the realm wherever they frequent, they're vibrating and what frequency and dimension they're on. They're not fully experiencing that the way they could. So I'm always looking for ways to make quantum jumps in the healing space, because I know how powerful healing the body and healing old emotions and really tapping into of that it can make literally within minutes, if not days, of someone's life can just be drastically, you could just move into a completely new vibration and frequency and or dimension by healing the body. And so, these are just a handful of ideas just to get people thinking, but these are, quantum healing efforts that I've made that I'm seeing, true potential. And there's some here that I still have to dabble in, but I think one of the easiest ones is just exercise, because exercise is an exorcism of energies. It helps the body release trapped energies that do not serve the body. So it's addressing the physical body, and it's addressing the energy body, and then also obviously it gets back to thoughts, right? So as we exercise, we have these endorphins flowing. We have all this good stuff flowing that we feel a lot better. So we have better thoughts, and we, we're just in a completely different energetic space. So finding ways, and I used to be big time into bodybuilding and building big muscles and all that. And there were times where I was 230 pounds. I'm about 190, I think now, of just I was just a meathead. That was my thing. And that's what I loved for years. I love that. I did a lot of cardio and stuff, but I did that just to maintain that bodybuilder lifestyle. But now, I love getting out in the sun and going for runs in the morning. I do yoga occasionally. I go do lift weights still here and there. I go hiking a lot. I go run while I'm hiking. I'm mixing it up I'm more just like free flowing with the exercise and listening to my body and, doing things that just bring joy to me. I'm not so fixed on a particular type of exercise or whatever. I'm just listening and enjoying the process as it relates to exercise. But it's so powerful. And I think it's underestimated, because sometimes we get stuck in these compartments of like, I do yoga. And in yoga, to me, is, what we know as yoga from the perspective of moving the physical body. There's another definition of yoga, which is basically a meditative state where you're not moving the body at all. And that's where you find the unity, which is what yoga means. But this physical moving of the body through yoga is like meditation in motion. That's what they call yoga, which in my experience has the most elevated outcomes from any type of exercise. By moving the body like that, combining with the breathing. There's so much going on in that trinity of physical, mental, and spiritual from that type of exercise, that form of exercise that has, massive potential. So it's a quantum form of exercise in my experience compared to lifting heavy weights or going on runs and doing other types of exercise. But any type of exercise is going to play a tremendous role in healing, even if that's just walking, right? For people that have been very sedentary or sit at a desk all day long, just getting to a regular walk every day and building on that is a massive, step towards healing the body, because motion creates, stimulus, which then gets the lymph system moving, which is the bathroom of the body, basically. And that brings us into infrared sauna. I just recently bought, a infrared sauna under $200 from Amazon. It's phenomenal. I get in that thing every day for an hour, and it's infrared, so it's really pulling out, tons of toxins. It's getting the lymph system moving. I mean, in many cases, it's more powerful than going walking. The only thing that probably is more powerful from walking is that if you can get sunlight on your face while you're walking, that energy coming from the sun is very cleansing and energetic, right? But the sauna actually plays a role. It almost acts like exercising, even though you're just sitting there. In this case, I'm on my phone doing business or connecting with people like you while I'm sitting in my little sauna at the house, right? Or if you have a gym membership, get yourself in the sauna and just hang out there. It's going to do wonders for your body. So sauna is very powerful. Obviously, if you can go to an infrared sauna, which most gyms don't really have, they have the old school saunas. Infrared's going to be more powerful and potent in the sauna world, but sauna is a great way to stimulate the lymph system. All kinds of stuff is going to happen. Get toxins out, get things moving. Another one that I'm just kind of starting to learn about is pranic healing. A lot of the Reiki guys, Reiki is a energy healing format, are moving and finding better success with pranic healing, which is unlike Reiki, it actually does find misalignments with the chakras, the various chakras in the body. It's using the chakra system to make an impact on the energetics in the body to heal the body. So I guess it's more new than Reiki, and a lot of Reiki practitioners are finding that it's much more powerful than their Reiki practice has been in the past. So again, that's one that I'm just now exploring. And there's likely pranic healers in your area that you could go do a session with them and check it out and see, how that plays out for you, or even if you're interested in learning more about, becoming a pranic healer. But it does have to do with tapping into the chakra systems and identifying, which energy wheels are not performing or resonating correctly in the body, so you can get that in alignment, which just enables the body to heal itself. Because we have to realize that the body can heal itself. It's just that if it has these blockages and energetic blocks and emotional blocks and physical blocks, then it has a much harder time healing itself. But generally the body will heal itself when we give it the right things. I talked about earlier the Rife machines and incorporating Rife frequencies using the live wires. The live wires that I've got a picture here of, it's so inexpensive. I think it's about $300 because most Rife machines are $1,000 or more. And it's really compact, so you can throw it in your backpack and take it with you with your laptop. That's what I do quite a bit. So Rife machines can play a role in healing. We talked about the plasma GANs, huge impact in the energetic fields, right? So they're very healing. That structured water, right? Drinking that 450 water, you shake it up, or you're running the water through a sump pump, so it just a pump, so it just keeps going and going, and the energy keeps rising. MMS, or miracle mineral solution, which is also known as chlorine dioxide, or CD. It's extremely powerful. There's a guy named Jim Humble that has spent his life, after he identified what chlorine dioxide can do for people, and it's healing people with all kinds of things. There's another product called TRS, which I have a picture of it there, but I have TRS here, which I'm using now, and I also give it to my daughter who has autism. It's another nanostate product. It's a zeolite in a nanostate, so it can cross the blood-brain barrier and pull toxins out of the brain, which most of us have metals in our brain, whether it be fluoride from all this water and toothpaste that we've consumed over the years, or it's aluminums, mercury, you name it, it's in our brain. It gets stuck there. And this TRS product can naturally pull those toxins out of the brain and throughout the body. It encapsulates those toxins and carries it right out of the body through the urine without harming other areas of the body, which is very uncommon with any kind of chelation treatments. They generally leave the brain or wherever those toxins are stored, and they actually find other areas in the body to connect to and create new havoc, essentially. Whereas TRS, people with all types of conditions, and even people without conditions, are having better speech, better thought process. Their memories aren't, they're not as foggy anymore. TRS is making a big difference in a lot of people's lives. So there are, supplement. Would be considered a supplement. Same with chlorine dioxide or MMS. There's quantum-based supplements that are really making an impact on people's lives. And MMS and TRS are just a few of those. The other one here, I've got the Primer Cube. If you're familiar with Dave LaPonte's work on the Primer fields, he actually developed the Primer Cube, which is a patented technology, which he's now released to the public as of August 2019. And it can be made very inexpensively. He does not produce the Primer Cube because basically the government wants to shut it down. And so the only thing he can do, so he can't make claims about what it does, because he, in his experience and other people's experience using the Primer Cube, people are being healed of what would be considered a death-based disease, or
I think
I'm back, guys. Can you guys hear me?
Probably come back on in a second. He probably went out. So what he's going over is a list. I can't remember the title of it, but there were lists of important areas to kind of create. I would say like a holistic approach to creating the community and the environment that we want to live in. Yeah. And so there were like different topics like healing and air and water. So there's a list of things. And so he had, so he's kind of just going over it right now. And so I think he was on the healing. I can see on the thing, the healing, healing slide. And then, so I also took a picture of one of the first slides where it was called Quantum Simplicity. And the bullet points were attention, your intention, your heart space, nature, and awareness. And so he broke out those bullet points with other, I don't know if you can say words, maybe he can help clarify. But he kind of just broke out into detail, like an approach to kind of thinking about the different topics of attention, intention, heart space, nature, and awareness.
Yeah, we can come back to that after we get through this. If you want me to cover that again, I'd be happy to do that.
Cool. Yeah, I would just like to see all the slides, because I'm just taking notes of all the bullet points, because it's a very, very organized structure of things to look for, without missing anything out.
Yeah, what's great about these 9 different areas, and we're close to, we're getting there, but
yeah, do your thing, just do your thing.
Yeah, is that they overlap. A lot of these solutions are overlapping, right? So the food we consume affects our thoughts, which affects healing, right? So it's all come together. And what I did is I cut my video off and I made sure stuff around the house here is not using the internet so that we make sure we don't have too many problems here. So let's talk about education. And for me, it's all about sharing knowledge with the young and the old, and having, youngsters. I think that the kiddos these days, with the energy that they have and the vibration that they're coming into this realm with, they've got a lot to teach us elders. And whether that's through observing them or actually getting their perspective on traditional knowledge that, us as adults think, and this is that whole hierarchical structure of like, well, the elders know everything. Well, the elders have their own perspective and they have a gnosis on how things were done in the past. But a lot of these youngsters can bring a lot of quantum thoughts and ideas to the table to old gnosis, essentially. So the way I see like things playing out, things that I'm taking compassionate action on is, which is where kind of like I had some success in my life, because the traditional, 4 years of college and all that wasn't something that really I could work with, because I didn't have the money, and my parents didn't have a lot of money. And so, even though I started down that path and I started getting into sports medicine early on and was kind of going to a state college to try and do the 4-year thing, like it really just didn't resonate with me. But when I tapped into like taking trade school stuff and, going to, I went to college and I took accounting and things like that. Even though I didn't like that stuff, I knew, and I was big into business. So I took the classes that I knew I needed to have that knowledge to be very good at what I wanted to do, which was, something involved with business. And so I took classes that not were a part of some curriculum to get some piece of paper. It was, these are classes, hey, I've got to know these things to be able to effectively run a business, even if those topics aren't really what I want to be doing once I run a business. And then when I went from, for many years, I was a plumber. I did a lot of blue collar stuff and I'd done a lot of white collar stuff. I became a Cisco systems engineer and a computer engineer. And it was because I went to trade school. And I felt like, wow, that was like, I feel like this idea of going to spending years in these schools to get this basic knowledge that they teach us. I mean, literally, I could have learned everything I know in basically a year's time, what I learned in the first 12 years of so-called school. I mean, it's just nonsense, all this stuff that they put us through, and they don't even teach us anything. So I just see that the world of education is about, as you're learning, the way you learn about the specifics about what it takes, whether it might be some math-based stuff or whatever the topic is, the fastest way to learn is doing, right? Is to get your hands dirty and start doing stuff with people that either have the gnosis or people that are, at a higher stage of gnosis than I am. And those people that have gnosis on a particular topic, those folks allowing the students to bring up new ideas or concepts that might actually enhance their own gnosis of something that maybe, just like with my quantum roundtable and talking to Clayton about his water, I'm asking questions like, well, what if I put a ring magnet around this portable water device? Can we improve the energetics that way? What if I wrap a copper wire around this portable device? Can we increase the energetics of the water even more with those types of techniques? These are things that are stimulating the guy that he thinks he's a master at this and saying, well, let's test it. That's a great idea, right? And so I think that's how I see education should be, and it's very workshop based, very short term. Like, I've talked about this on a previous call where I would see like, hey, people can pick a topic and maybe you work you learn about that topic for a month, and that's version 1 of that topic. And in the next month, if you see something else that you want to tap into, a version 1 of something else, another completely different topic, that's fine. You don't need to go to version 2 or 1.2 of the same thing forever. If it doesn't resonate with you, you can bounce around and come back to it, right? You're going to bring a new perspective when you come back, right? It's like this idea of having this whole linear step-by-step, and because you're young, you need to learn these before you learn these. I mean, all this stuff is to me is a little, to me, I think you can make a quantum shift if you're doing hands-on training, you're learning through doing. There's no reason you can't become a master. For me, like one of the things I'm trying to actively put together is, and we're going to talk about that in this shelter section coming up, is the workshop for how to build a dome Gaia, which is using aircrete to build these dome homes. They do trainings throughout the world. There's one coming up in Tulum, Mexico, that I'd like to try and make it to in April. And in that 1 week, environment, I'm going from zero to hero. I'm going to be able to know how to actually build these homes using this technique, and then I can share that same gnosis with the next person. In a week's time, I've learned how to build a home with this aircrete technology, right? So that's the beauty of where I see education going. Obviously, the online realm is playing a role there too, right? The ability right now for me to educate you guys and bring these ideas and thoughts to the forefront, the internet can play a role there too. And that's why I create this co-creation space where maybe on this first call, I'm just planting a lot of seeds, and you guys might take some of these seeds and run with them before our next call and kind of come back with your own experience and say, hey, Justin, have you thought about this? Or I saw this product, or, this is a technique that you didn't talk about. Maybe we can, see how that plays a role. And that's exactly what I'm looking for, because I've got a lot of stuff in my head and stuff I'm working on and stuff I'm doing myself. But without that co-creation, open forum opportunity, my education is going to be topped off too. I'm going to be, limited by how many YouTube videos I can consume and how much time in the day I have to try it myself. And obviously everybody's experience is going to be slightly different. So that's just it. I think this topic for me, and I'd love to get your feedback, is really, this should just be more of a quantum approach to education, to where it's a lot more fast tracked. In a short amount of time, I should be able to learn, what's necessary, right? There's a lot of that's the part of the challenge in the 3D realm, is we've gotten caught up in all this, the intellect, the unconscious awareness, conditioned thinking of all these details and all these details and all these details. Why don't we back up to conscious awareness and say, what is it I need to know to have this outcome? And let's start there. I can get into the details if needed. I can go into the intellect and use that if I think I need to. But I really just want to focus on, what do I really need to know to have this outcome? And so that's kind of my thoughts on, learning and manifesting at the same time, and really fast forwarding in a quantum way education as we know it today. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I just had a question. Trade school, is that like trading stocks and commodities, or is it something else?
No. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up so that you have full understanding. In the United States, a trade school is basically like, hey, if you want to be a welder for your career, if you want to weld metal together, you would go take welding classes. And there's a whole, colleges even have these classes. A trade is sort of a skill that you have. That's what a trade is. A trade is like, oh, I'm a welder. I'm a professional this. I'm a professional that. That's my trade. So a trade school is the idea of just going and taking the classes that you need to know that trade. Why am I taking biology when I'm going to be a welder?
Yeah, okay, like your skill, right?
Exactly.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And that's what I did for Cisco Systems. I took all the Cisco classes at a local community college, and I immediately went into that business. And, for 14 years, I was building computer networks all over the world for big businesses. And it's because I took those classes. I went to basically that trade school. I didn't go through a 4-year college and spend all that time learning a bunch of stuff that really is complete nonsense. So let's talk a little bit about shelter. And, I think shelter, this is an area that I think a lot of people are concerned with in terms of right now. It's it's for most of us, it's our biggest overhead. It's our biggest cost, which again, just like when I talked about the food and how much time it takes and how much money it takes and all this preparation, are worried about our next meal and all that kind of stuff. Even with shelter, if we can get to a place to where we can build, beautiful shelters inexpensively without getting home loans and all this, this old world of financing and being charged interest and paying all these payments every month. There's a lot of people, whether they're building these types of homes or they're, moving out of and living out of an RV or whatever they're doing. There's a lot of people doing that and kind of unhooking from the grid of sorts, of being trapped and stuck in one location, and or being stuck with the overhead and the costs related to buying homes or even renting places out, because it's so expensive, which then requires us to spend so much time working to try and pay our bills, which is just completely ruining our experience here, right? So shelter, I think, plays a key role in the future of where New Earth goes. And for me, I'm just putting out some ideas here, and there's a lot more in this area. Like I mentioned, with you go on YouTube and people are converting vans and trucks and all kinds of things into living spaces, and traveling the world and driving around in these mobile homes, essentially, even if they're not buying the traditional RV. So some really cool stuff happening in the space. But like I mentioned before, in terms of education, one of the areas I'm trying to get up to speed on is kind of this structure, building these structures. Where can we find cheap land to build these structures? Can we use the Fibonacci sequence to create the architecture and or the whole entire community, which is the natural Fibonacci sequence? If you look that up, it is the natural flow of nature. It's how every flower and everything in nature is created with that. It's a mathematical formula. And I've seen communities being built that way. There are architects that, are building around the Fibonacci sequence. So to me, that resonates with me that, hey, if we're going to build this, we're not just going to do it randomly. We could do it in a very thoughtful way that connects with how Mother Nature actually works using the Fibonacci sequence. And then just resonance, right? So the way I see a lot of the homes and buildings that we generally see in the current reality is that, these are just a bunch of boxes. They feel like little prisons sometimes. Like they might really look nice on the outside, and sometimes they're really nice on the inside. And I appreciate, the place. I'm in an apartment, and I really love it. It's small and it's got everything I need. And, more and more I'm like, this is even too much. I'd rather just shrink it down even more. And I know that's happening for other people too. But in many cases, I've been to really nice mansions, even in Nicaragua. They're beautiful mansions. They're surrounded by a wall of barbed wire and a concrete fence. So you're in this like little prison state. It's like a fancy prison that these people are paying a fortune for these homes. They're really nice homes, but when you look out the window, you're staring at a wall with barbed wire on top of it. So that's not, for me, that's not the energy. That's not the resonance I want to live in as we move into New Earth. I want to look for solutions that really tap into the energetics of Earth, maybe even placing communities and or homes on ley lines, as we've seen with the pyramids and a lot of these structures, Washington, D.C., all the the Vatican and all this stuff. It's all been put on ley lines, which are energetic lines, which are basically the chakra system of Earth. Okay, that's what ley lines are. And there's a lot of energy coming in through those. So I'm hoping to at the top right there is a picture of a dome home from Dome Gaia. That's the kind of homes that I want to learn how to build. And there's a simple process to doing that. And so I plan to do my best to go to the training that's going to be in April. You can go to domegaia.com and check them out. Excuse me. But that's kind of the word, like I've been in one of those homes actually in Nicaragua. It wasn't a Dome Gaia home. It was a guy that built it actually out of concrete himself years ago. But when you walk into his home, like you just immediately feel resonance. That's a powerful resonance. And many of us that have been in cathedrals and old, old churches and things like that have felt that energy because it's the way that building was built. And many of these buildings, the cathedrals, they're all free energy buildings that were built a long time ago. And there's a lot of free energy buildings being built now that the public is not privy to the fact that those buildings are generating their own energy. But many of those churches and things that you can walk into, or a lot of them that are now government buildings with the big domes on them, you walk in there, you feel a massive amount of energy just being inside of there. And so, that should be a part of our shelter. It should be a part of our life all the time, as opposed to being in these boxes that don't allow that energy to resonate. So that's one of the areas that I'm focused on. And even, if you really look at the past, most of these communities and buildings and stuff, they were even built within star forts. So you can go Google or YouTube star forts and learn all about star forts. But basically, these are energetic protection mechanisms that were built around communities to keep the energetics within that community sound, right? So this plays into that whole energetic field that plays out even throughout an entire community to ensure that the people stay in resonance with each other, as well as to keep negative energies outside of the community out. The star forts play a role, right? It's sort of like having a border around your community that ensures that the energy that's within it stays within it, and the energy that doesn't serve it stays outside of it. And that's what star forts have been used for over the years. So any thoughts and ideas in this area, the things that you've thought about, or anything around shelter?
Yeah. Can you tell me more about, or can you tell us more about the project Alexi? Because that looks really, really nice. The picture on the right down of the ground floor.
Oh yeah, so I got that. If you Google Fibonacci architecture, that is one of his that's one of his plans that he's made for. This is a blueprint for a home that there's a guy that actually is doing Fibonacci based architecture for homes and retreat centers and other types of buildings, where he's actually building the Fibonacci sequence into the construction of these buildings. So that's where that came from. And I'm the same way. I'm like, wow, that resonates with me, and it's because of that Fibonacci sequence. So that's what I'm talking about, where you can even take a very simple shelter, maybe something like a Dome Gaia home, and apply Fibonacci to it and create, a little platform that actually is tapped directly into nature using Fibonacci.
Yeah, this looks really, really nice.
And he's got a lot more stuff. If you find his website, you'll find a lot of cool stuff he's put together.
And what's his name again?
I don't remember, but there are very few people doing it. So when you see it, you'll know it. And again, I can, once we're through the presentation stuff, I can go grab some links for you guys if you want that, or we can do that offline. But yeah, If you Google Fibonacci architecture, you're going to find them.
Yeah, yeah. On Google, I'm seeing a lot of different types of buildings on Fibonacci.
And there have been communities built. I think there was one built actually in Cuba, where it was like it was a art institute, and the whole almost like the whole school was built, and have aerial footage of it. I watched a TV show about it recently. I can't remember what the show was called. And I was trying to dig it up online, but I haven't been able to find it. But it was during that time when supposedly Russia and Cuba were, working on stuff to go against the U.S. and all this nonsense. And they shut it down because they ran out of government funds to keep it open. But the guy had built this whole art institute, not the same guy, but someone else had constructed the entire school with different buildings and stuff in the Fibonacci sequence. And it was like jaw dropping, it just takes your breath away seeing the aerial photos of how beautiful the whole layout was. It was just amazing. So
yeah, if I'm ever to build a house in my country of origin, which is Cameroon, it's definitely this are already definitely like embedded within my my thoughts. So yeah, this is nice.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and again, just creates that deeper resonance. So let's talk about energy and freeing the masses, obviously from petroleum and from other, false beliefs that are out there. So the energy game, again, we're pretty much still in the dinosaur. I mean, the dinosaurs never existed, but this whole idea of being primitive, we're pretty primitive right now. We think that because we're running around with these fancy cell phones or whatever, that we have all this technology. We don't have jack shit really when it comes to what people used to have. Free energy used to be everywhere. Free energy buildings were built. The buildings were built with the energy built into them. If you've done any kind of research on the mud floods and Tartaria and free energy, that all this stuff existed and was actually much more simplistic and worked so well that, the stuff that we're doing now is really a distraction from the reality, which is, a lot of this stuff, they don't even give us the technology because they want to keep charging us for petroleum and coal and all these other, nonsense approaches to generating energy. Even solar to me is pretty much a joke, what they've given us to date, and it's gotten a lot better. But, the reality is like, there's already, all this stuff already existed and it was a lot better. And much of the world of energy right now, we've been lied to about. So I don't want to get caught up in going too far down the rabbit hole, but in terms of this conversation, my number one thing, which may take some time to see play out, is just these air compressors. Okay, these engines on these airliners and these engines are used in the open wheel IndyCar race cars. They're used on cruise ships. These are air compressors. Okay, these planes and these cruise ships and all this stuff, they don't have tens of thousands of gallons of fuel on them. That's not how this works. That's what they tell us. That doesn't even, an airplane, a commercial airplane would be a flying bomb if it had all this petroleum that they say that it takes to power these engines. These engines actually take the air from the ether, they compress it, and that's what propels the plane. Okay. And I'm just describing the plane a little bit because I know for some people this topic and this idea is like mind-blowing, that these planes don't operate on fuel like petroleum. They just don't. They don't use, there may be some petroleum and some forms of fuel that they need for the landing gear or some hydraulic stuff here and there, but these planes do not use liquid fuel as the fuel. They're using air. These are air compressors. These are giant air compressors. And so, my thought is, because I think really the future is localized energy production for our own home or community, I mean, one of these engines could be on site and they're just turned on when they need it to be, in order to charge up the batteries that the community uses when other energy resources aren't available. So, and when I was in the IT space, when Arnold Schwarzenegger was the governor of California, he actually signed a bill, and we built the network for the computer network for Southern California Edison, the electric company, and they installed 9 of these air compressors at various locations in California. And what we were told at the time was that, oh, these are a backup system. So if the grid, if there's too much energy being sucked off the energy grid, we can turn these on and add power to the grid. And that may or may not be true, but it's likely that they're just using these all the time because they're so inexpensive to actually run, to actually add energy to the grid, so they don't have to pay for coal and all this other stuff, but they still charge us the same premiums. And so this is a part of the fraud that's going on in the old reality, is that these engines, they don't use fuel. And so a lot of these, even these airplane costs flying all over the world, they're charging you, fuel surcharges and all that. It's all nonsense. So, this technology is highly advanced, and essentially the energy is coming from the air. They're compressing it, and which has, by compressing air, you're creating propulsion and you're creating energy. So that's one area that, excuse me, that's still at its earliest stages in terms of getting it to a consumer that could use a smaller version of it. And I'm showing you, obviously, one of the bigger versions that's on a huge commercial airliner, but they have smaller versions. Even smaller Lear jets have smaller versions of these engines on them. And it could be a version like that could be adapted to charging and, powering your home or powering an entire community, likely, just off of the air. So that's one angle of the energy game that I think is something that we should all explore and be well aware of, that hoax has been going on for a long time, and that has a massive opportunity because it's been developed for years, decades, by Boeing and all these other big companies that hide this secret. And if that technology could be rolled down and we can get our hands on these air compressors and convert it into power to a grid that powers our homes or our community, that just sets us free immediately in so many ways. I'm sure that could be scaled down to even something that fits in your hand. So that part is very interesting for me, but that's very early. The thing that's exciting right now that I just learned about is this new graphene supercapacitors. Okay, so most of the batteries that we see, even in the fanciest of technology, whether it's a battery that's in a Tesla car or any of the major battery storage technology, is all based on lithium ion technology. And generally it's a lot of these, what they call 18650 batteries. And, inside of a Tesla car, the giant battery that they've created, all it is thousands of 18650 little batteries. They're kind of like a giant AA battery is what they look like. And they are all based on lithium ion technology, which is pretty primitive stuff. It's not that great. It's the same battery technology that's in your phones. It's good, and it seems to, work pretty well, but the reality is we're constantly having to charge those things up. It takes a long time to charge up. So what's happened is that this technology is finally here, and that's the beauty. I think that a lot of this technology is going to come forward, and they can't really stop it anymore, which is the beauty. So you can start to get your hands on some of this stuff and start playing with it and exploring how it can be used. But I just found this gentleman on YouTube that I can get you the links to, but he's made these graphene super caps. So this little module you see at the top, you can charge that in 5 to 10 minutes, and it can last up to 72 hours. and you can stack a bunch of modules together if you need more power. So you can see how that's a game changer, because normally getting that 72 watt hours would take, sometimes hours to fully charge lithium ion batteries. So if we can charge in 5 to 10 minutes, now I might even be able to use the module itself to charge other modules quickly and have that capacity. So, you can see a product there where he's got a whole briefcase, which it has a module. It has the graphene super cap module, and it has an inverter on top of it that he's hooked up, and just put it into a simple briefcase to where basically you've got what you need to charge the module from your car or your car lighter or battery, and you can plug in whatever you need. You can plug in your laptop or whatever. It doesn't really matter. So you can start to see like the applications where, well, if I can charge it in 5 to 10 minutes, a lot of the stuff that I need in my apartment and things like that, or where I live, I don't really need it during the day. I don't need lights during the day. I don't need some of these other things plugged in all the time. I only need it to be running at night. And so, I can charge these modules during the day, and it only takes 5 to 10 minutes to charge them. So even if I've got a refrigerator that I want to keep charged or keep running all the time, then unplugging it for 5 to 10 minutes is not going to make, it's not going to create any problems. Everything will still stay refrigerated. So I think just kind of, the fact that I can buy this and it's only a few $100, and, I could stack more of those modules together, and this technology is coming out. I mean, this is a huge game changer. And it's one of the downloads I had actually, which was using magnetics for power, and also how super caps or super capacitors would play a role in transitioning us from these traditional ways to store power with the batteries, as well as being able to free ourselves of petroleum and these other energy sources that they've sort of forced us to consume by giving us limited options on how energy can be created. And then some of the other, obviously there's solar energy that's gotten better and better, and that's going to continue to move forward. But I think a lot of that has been held back. I think a lot of that solar stuff is already well more advanced than what consumers can get their hands on. So I'm assuming that a lot of these, and remember that all these technologies already really existed before. So it's not like we have to go create them again. They already exist. Many of them are patent protected, and the patents were bought up, and many of those patents are coming out of, protection now. So you're going to see a lot of people coming out with cool stuff that's going to fast forward our ability to be completely free from the traditional energy grid of petroleum and or relying on, the power company to give us what we need. We're going to be able to have these handheld devices that can give us all the power we need and more. And I even foresee, I've had some downloads about some old technology that's been around since the day the automobile was created. When Henry Ford made the first automobile, he had a switch on it that allowed you to run it off water, ethanol, gasoline, and some other types of fuel, because water vapor and steam is just a form of combustion. So there's no reason that we can't run automobiles on water. And so I see even this year, seeing people starting to sell converters that we can easily convert our vehicles from using gasoline to water as fuel. Just bringing back old technology that already existed, that they can no longer sort of, once you get it out on the internet and people order it, you really can't stop people. It's going to be hard for them to stop it. And once we can move forward with that. Now we've really, again, freed up our money resources, are reliant on a lot of things, right? It's a lot easier to go find some water than it is the next gas station. So these types of things are the things that I'm kind of looking at and working on, even with my quantum roundtable group, to see how we can take some of these new technologies like the graphene supercaps and this whole concept of how can I just produce my own energy in effective ways that I can apply immediately in my life right now, then we're gonna have a steamroll effect of really getting, you know, all of society being able to produce their own energy and setting them free, basically, from this idea that we need all these big companies and these third parties to provide us with electricity and fuel for our vehicles and all this other nonsense that is just ridiculous. So that's kind of where I'm at with, you know, basically creating a free energy state for each of us. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, bro, like very, very cool stuff, because these are like some things that I've never heard about before. The graphene supercaps, like this is the first time I'm hearing about this.
Mm-hmm.
And the super cooling, like I still don't get that. But in terms of like what you said about Henry Ford's automobile in like in the past, yeah, I read about that also, like in Napoleon Hill's 15 Laws of Success, and also like with Kevin Trudeau's work of Your Wish is Your Command. Like in those books were also stated that all this free energy, like energy has always been free, like there's always been like an abundance of energy, but of course like the powers that be were more like, if we can't put a meter on it, we don't want it. So they've like done a lot of gone through a lot of trouble to actually make sure that the world actually is the way it is today, so that everybody has to run through the process of actually paying for energy. So yeah, I like, I also like the some, like when Nikola Tesla's patents came free, Elon Musk's company, the Tesla, like they bought a lot of the patents, just like to, so in terms of like, let me say, just like to monopolize things. So I don't know how, me personally, I don't know how things are gonna play out, but just like you said, there are a lot of people coming out with some cool stuff. So it's actually it's also going to be interesting, like to see from a space of observation, to see how things are going to play out in the world, and like in the perception stage. But of course, for us, it's always good to know that these are things that like work on. So like on, these are the type of things that actually assist us on our path to sovereignty, like having the type of houses that actually runs on its own energy, because everything is abundant, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, the supercooling idea that came through a download, and the idea there is that the biggest challenge with a lot of energy production is the heat that is required that comes off of, you know, even with this module, you see it has like a heat sink on top of it to dissipate heat off of the super caps. So the idea is like, well, if we can provide, if we can use magnetics or some other type of technology to create super cooling environments, then the energy production potential is near endless.
Yeah.
You know, some of the shortcomings of energy production is heat, you know, is creating too much heat in that process, and losing that heat is energy, right? So, you know, trying to recapture that too.
Yeah, cool.
And the other thing too with you know, Elon and the stuff, I mean, Elon Musk is just, he's just another control structure. So all the stuff he works, he's just as bad, if not worse, than the old control.
Yeah, they're just like the new, like,
yeah.
Let's say you have like the petroleum and all the let me say, like that type of energy, and now you have like all this electrical type of energy, but like they're just like the new, in brackets, bad guys, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they can turn those cars off remotely, and that's happened to people.
Yeah.
You know, they have full control over you with that, all his stuff that he's doing. So, you know, and they're just dangling carrots. Like, again, they're showing you stuff that's really not even that fancy. It's just so much fancier than what we've known. Yeah, it seems like it's amazing.
I guess the stuff that really is fancy is the fact that like when people have access to all this gnosis in terms of how to actually create these devices in order to have homes that run on energy like abundantly without like really having to connect on the grid. I think that's like those are like going to be the world changing events.
No question. I mean, and as you probably know, like the fact is that with these current utility companies, they don't own the pipes. They don't own the air and the water that pass through those pipes. The public owns them. We paid for those. They only own the meter.
Yeah.
So all you have to do is remove the meter. You know, we've just consented. Everything is about we consented to agree.
Yeah, consensus. That's it.
A lot of this stuff, you know, even with the stuff we have now, it's like some of it is just we need to change our behavior to get it closer to being able to fully be sovereign, like you said.
Yeah, but you know, as you said, like in the beginning when I joined in, a lot of the programming has been done already, like even before we were here. So it's like first walking like with the foods, the water, the air, and also like the environment, the thoughts, healing. And once all that is like out of the way, then people can start really like having a grasp of how a better observation of how to actually observe things and not like always observing things through the lens that they're always been using without like actually cleaning it out.
Yeah, seeing the truth instead of through lies, right?
Yeah.
It's a process for sure.
It's a process.
Perfect transition here in the sovereignty, really stepping into our true power. And obviously, I think, you know, there's two places for sovereignty. It's really spiritual and then physical, right? So I think, you know, for many of us, we've done a lot to spiritually find sovereignty, but a lot of us haven't done much in the physical. We're still behaving in a way that doesn't really move us much closer to physical sovereignty. And, you know, I just want to bring up some of the things that I'm in the process of doing. And some of this, I'll just say this, some of this stuff I feel like won't even matter in the coming days. So even as I go through this process myself, because it's very convoluted, and the governments and all these satanic, you know, organizations have done a great job of sort of hiding ways that we can become sovereign and unattached from their slave system. They have to give us remedy, and there are paths to remedy, but they've buried that. You know, they're not actively telling you like, oh, if you don't want to be a slave anymore of our system, then here's the steps you can take to opt out of that and become a sovereign. They're never going to tell you that, but there are ways through the various systems to reclaim your sovereignty, to reclaim that you're a living soul and not a dead entity, which is what the birth certificate and all these other certificates that they created at your arrival here on Earth, to basically start to use your labor and your energy, and they're making money off of that by getting you to believe that you're the all caps name and all these other things that you see on your driver's license and credit cards and all this nonsense that they've created, and duped us into thinking that that's who we are. If you're in the United States, and this may be the case in other places, you know, the United States is a separate private corporation. The United States is not the United States of America, which is the Republic. It's a separate corporation that only exists in Washington, D.C. And so, you know, if you can, and that corporation went bankrupt in 1933, which makes us all here in the United States of America, makes us creditors. But we still run around paying debts and acting like debtors. So they have all these trust accounts that they've set up, which is the birth certificate, and there's actually money in those accounts, and they're leveraging that and selling it on the open market, creating treasury bonds and all this stuff. That's our accounts that they're leveraging because they consider us lost at sea or dead. And so my point is that all these so-called debts, whether it's student loans or home mortgages or credit cards or auto loans, you can discharge all those debts. All debts, there are no real debts. Everything is paid for already. And these are steps we can take to start freeing ourselves of this nonsense system that has been created around us and made us believe that, oh, we borrowed this money. All they're doing is actually going into your TDA account here in the United States and pulling the money out and giving it to you. It's your money. They give it to you, and then they charge you interest on it. It's your own money. It's already paid for. So when you go buy a car, for an example, the finance company is tapping into, you're signing the paperwork, which gives the finance company the right to go into your TDA account, your trust account, pull out the money, pay the car dealership in full for the car, so they get their money immediately, and then the finance company is getting you to agree to pay back your own account with interest. That's what's happening in any of these transactions. Same with credit cards, anything else. You're giving them the consent to go into your own account and get the money and give it to you, and then they charge you some ridiculous interest charges that you pay back over time. So this is what's happening.
Yeah, I've had like a different opinion on this matter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like, with the rise of cryptocurrency, since 2017, I started like doing some deep research on money. And the thing that I found out was like, actually, like everything just boils down to like three things. Like we have three types of money that actually exist. And like the type of, like, let's say the dollar, the yen, the euro, all these fiat currencies, as we call them, these are all like, it's like the government's money, right? Like it's man-made, like, and
money,
yeah, and it's not like it's not real money, because since that was it Nixon who took off the dollar from the gold standard?
Yeah.
That's when actually money just became like money or fiat currency, like, in order for me to be correct.
Backed by gold, right?
Yes. When it wasn't backed by gold, that's when it just lost its value. And the only thing that is giving it value is like the consent of the people and the governments who are like actually like enforcing rule, So if one of those two falls, then the worth of money actually, or the worth of fiat currency actually falls down. And the second type of money that exists is actually the people's money. Bro, give me one second.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry for that. The second type of money that actually exists is the people's money. And the people's money is actually like on the rise now with cryptocurrencies. Like, I don't know if you've done some research on blockchain and how that actually works.
Sure.
So all like the Bitcoin and Ethereum and the Neo and all those types of currencies, like the digital currencies, are actually like on the rise, and it's like more viewed as the people's money, because if you've done the research, then I don't need to explain, then you know everything. And then the third type of money that they call God's money, or I don't know how you call it, but God's money, because it has been here since before we're even born, are all like the commodities like gold, silver, and things like that. Because even if we don't view that as a monetary value, like it has values in the other, like in its other traits. So like, I don't know,
tangibility.
yeah. So like that's the let me say the conclusion that I've like come to see in terms of how to classify money. So anything that has to do with fiat, like I just also view it as part of like the grand scheme of game being played, actually, like to like really keep people
Yeah.
in the, and then in this place of what is actually really going on.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree that with those forms of so-called money, but obviously the fiat money is actually it's federal in the United States. The dollar is a Federal Reserve note, which is actually a debt.
Yeah.
Um, so, and even with Bitcoin, or I shouldn't say Bitcoin, with cryptocurrency, I mean, the problem there is that as much as it has an element of freeing the people, it's already heavily controlled by big organizations already, and that money is zero when there's no power.
What do you mean?
Meaning, turn off all your computers and electrical devices, you don't have any money to trade.
Yeah, that's true. So, but yeah, at the same time, it's that's why it's also digital, because at the end of the day, what is the thing that is connecting all of us right now today is the internet, right? So the same rule applies to that, like turn off all your power and all the towers, and there is no internet connection. Then this spaceless connection also falls off. So in order to like this space that we actually are in also needs a different form of money. And dealing with fiat, like sending money takes like I don't know how many days, and then like all the fees and everything.
Yeah, and so my thought is that I'm always looking for the quantum step, and I can see where crypto can play a role in the short term, but I think it's a very short term role, if any. Is that I see it as, okay, well, what was the original, what were other forms of energy trading? And obviously that was the barter system, right? You have this and I have that. And that seems like, okay, primitively, and you think about that, it's like, oh, that's so primitive, because that's going to create all these new problems. And, this guy's got corn and I don't need corn, but I've got something he needs and all that. It creates, we need some sort of exchange. But I think that in quantum, we're going to have, telepathy is going to be a more of a communication, a tool, right? So I can just look at you and you'll know what I'm really thinking. You don't need me to say these words, this language, which is just separating us all. Another way with energy is that I should be able to look at you or even touch you and exchange information, right? So just the ability to touch another human being and exchange knowledge and gnosis and give you what you need, and you can give me what I need. Like, I think that we're going to get back to more of that sort of, and it's not like a lot of the exchange.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. So you're looking more at it from a point of like beyond physicality, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, makes sense. But then again, we have a lot of work to do in terms of like bringing, like elevating other humans to that space. Like if you see all the work that needs to be done in terms of, again, food, water, education, healing, and thoughts, and all such things, it's a long road,
Well, yeah, I think that it's a short road if we can get the system to collapse, right? Because right now we're still sort of got our foot in, even if you're pro crypto, you still have your foot in both sides of it, right? But what if the rug was pulled out from the fiat foot that you're standing on?
Yeah, but money, right? At the end of the day, we're still in the matrix, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's not like let's say, for example, if you want to communicate with like with a sleeper, like you're not like just gonna go all beaming, right? You need to like walk the path of the sleeper in order to awake the sleeper in certain stages.
Mhm.
So you need some tools in order to, like, let me say, interact with the sleeper in such a manner that the sleeper will be able to, like, understand or grasp what you're trying to, like, show him or her.
Mhm. And I would say that, you know, based on that energy exchange that we'd be using on a, like, just like the telephone is, you know, is really a bad example of what's possible if we were tapped into telepathy, what we could do, right? We think it's really cool and it does all these cool things, but the reality is it's pretty primitive.
Yeah, it's just a fraction.
Right, exactly. And I think that's the same way with, like, looking at crypto. Well, couldn't we have a similar but different version that actually is just using the human body and what, you know, that resource to tap into? And maybe crypto and all that's heading us in that direction to understanding that. But I think that, you know, if let's just say that tomorrow, you know, the dollar goes to zero and it's just, I could throw it in my fireplace and it's worth more doing that than trying to go somewhere and getting somebody to accept it. Then, you know, what'll happen with the conscious, the collective consciousness is that, you know, there's no reason to charge for the products that you have anymore. I mean, you would just give them away. You would just, you know, for somebody that needed them, you would just, you know, the person that you needed to buy the supplies from, you know, they don't even have a value to add to the supplies that they had. Like, you could quickly get back to a place to where people are just giving each other stuff, which is what should be going on anyway, because you're trying to accomplish something. I need that. I can help you. Like, it's all like a, you know, everything comes back to you when you give. So
Yeah, it's like back into the nomadic state of being, like how it used to be in the past.
like, you need it, of course. Here, you know, like, I might run out, but, you know, here I can give you this, and maybe
Yeah,
you can help me produce some more, and you know what I mean. Like, I think it's all the programming around, like, well, if, you know, if you don't have the money, then we're all screwed. It's like, no, actually, we just get back to what Mother Nature would do, which would be share its abundance with everybody, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping for that. I'm seeing that play out, and I mean, the system is just, they've just been pumping fake money into the system for so long. And that's my point with, like, a lot of these items here, with going through the process of discharging debts or setting up a tax-free trust or going through the UCC process. All this stuff is stuff you can do here in the United States to kind of get back to sovereignty. I mean, I feel like a lot of that's going to vanish once the system folds on itself, the financial system. You know, won't even need to do any of that. It'll just kind of disappear, you know. The need for that. So that's what I'm hoping for, is that we see that play out this year, to where that fake system finally collapses and nobody believes it's worth anything. And, you know, you don't have people sitting there trading your labor on markets, trying to make money off your labor, you know.
So do you also, like, anticipate the crash of 2020?
Yeah, I mean, even, you know, we've got huge planetary alignments that are going to hit on January 12th. I mean, we might see something happen on as early as January 12th or 13th, you know, with some of this stuff playing out. You know, it might not be the financial system, might be some other area of government where it starts to just crumble. I think that the energetics of 2020 is about sort of flushing out and purging out all those energies that no longer serve the collective consciousness. You know, that the financial system being one of those, you know.
Yeah, you know, the 2nd of February 2020 is also like an aligned date. It's also like a very, very special date that's actually a reset date as well.
Yeah, perfect. Love it. And then you got April 1st, which is really probably the real new year, which is kind of the beginning of spring. And, you know, that's why I call it in the state of the April Fool's Day. That's probably because they're fooling us about what that date really means. You know, there's all kinds of craziness that's going to play out, that, you know, it's going to collapse this old system to allow us to really shine and prosper and move forward into this age of Aquarius. So it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah. Like, Sit back, observe, and have a bird eye view
That's
perception.
it. Get your bag of popcorn and just watch it all play out.
That's true.
Because it's going to be painful for a lot of folks that are not in a state of understanding about what this is. That it's about a death and rebirth process that the earth and the collective has to go through. You know, and a lot of people are attached to that money, right? Their whole life and their ego and everything that exists for them is attached to that fake money that they think in their mind actually has value.
Yeah.
So, but that's all I had. And so I'd be happy to roll back and go back to my initial slides.
Yeah, because I've been taking like just some notes.
Yeah, so this was what Anna was talking about with sort of, you know, these were some of the topics that where I just wanted to keep things super simple. Like anytime you use the word quantum, a lot of people kind of get like, oh my God, this is, you know, quantum physics and all this stuff is just way too complicated. And what does that really mean? And I wanted to keep it simple and like just make sure that people understood that really like your attention is the currency, especially now in the new 2020 energy.
Yes, that's so true because everything is about attention nowadays.
Yeah.
That's the real currency.
And they've, you know, obviously they've monetized, they knew this all along and they've been monetizing that either with advertising or getting us focused on going to work and basically extracting our labor for their, you know, their own benefit. They've known that attention has always been the currency and they've monetized that. Our intention is, and also our will really is the compass.
Yeah.
You know, what's
That's
guiding.
that's what helps us to navigate our ship.
Exactly.
The intention and the will.
Yeah, the vessel, right? And then the heart space or the 0 point or the singularity is really the map. You know, like, hey, if you're up in the mind coming up with these ideas, or that's where the ego comes in, and it's not the true map. You know, the heart space and everything that you're manifesting comes from that unconditional love or that neutrality space. That's the true map for maximizing this experience that we're in. And then Mother Nature, for me, I kind of had a realization that like that's really tied to uniqueness. Like even when you look at a single species of a plant, each plant in that species has its own uniqueness. Even though it produces similar fruits and the leaves look the same, like we all have our own uniqueness, and that can be found across the board, even across species. Different species have different uniqueness, and then even within a species of plants or animals, you're seeing that they even have their own uniqueness in each of them. So that taps in really well with our own unique gifts and, you know, essentially the powers that we have as individuals to express ourselves. And then lastly, awareness is really where a lot of our focus should be on, is just like being fully aware in the now moment all the time. And that's really tied to the photon or that light energy. And if we can continue to build awareness and build the photonic energy within the body, then, and in that heart space, then the experience and the frequency and vibration that we're within in the dimension is going to be just exponentially greater. So the actual projection that we see in the reality will play itself out. You have a better experience here, you know?
Yeah.
So I just kind of set the stage early on that. And one of the big things that I always say in my business coaching with entrepreneurs and business owners is put your attention on your intention. And that's really all you have to do, right? So even that quantum simplicity, I just brought it down even more simplistically, right? Put your attention on your intention and start taking heartfelt, compassionate action. And, you know, that should be coming from a state of being, not just, oh, I need to do all these things because I need to do all these things. And we kind of just fill our lives with doing things that really aren't actually based on our intention. We just think we need to do them. really getting to that state, that heartfelt space, and taking compassionate action, because it's stuff that makes you feel great. Just like me on this call for hours, where we've lost most of the people on the call, which is totally fine. I'm recording this so people can consume it later. But I could stay here for hours and talk about this stuff, right? And just, it's fulfilling for me. So, and then I gave my personal intention here. And again, I intend to bring unconditional love and conscious awareness to as many entrepreneurs, business owners, and other living beings as possible through my thoughts, actions, and behaviors in each now moment, because I want everyone to grow, be protected, nourished, healed, fulfilled, and at peace in their heart now and forever. So that's my intention. And that's what I do every day now. And I love it. I have a ton of fun.
Wholeness, brother, wholeness.
Wholeness. And then this was kind of the 9 key areas which we went through and you stepped into that. And again, as I opened it up, I said, this is an open forum. This was just like the main topics that I came up with when I was thinking about a framework of like, what is it that really affects most of our lives? It is the all-encompassing areas of our life that, you know, and again, I figured that, you know, over time, these might change slightly, what we label them as, or there might be more of them or condensed into fewer ones. But I felt like these were 9 areas that, you know, in life you can't really get away from. And I believe that, you know, we can create quantum solutions around. So, and, you know, I always like to say in business too, that small hinges move big doors. So we can start to take small steps and change our behaviors, which will actually create a drastic change both in our own lives, but also in the collective consciousness.
Yeah, I think I came in at the end of water, so I missed air, I think.
Okay, we'll go through it. So I was just, you know, in each of these areas, like a lot of this is just basically kind of talking about the things I've been thinking about and the things I'm starting to incorporate in my own practice daily. And so I was talking about just having the awareness of breathing, like even without all this other technology and stuff that we can use to enhance that. Like, you know, when I breathe in, am I letting my belly fill up fully like a jolly old fat man? Or am I breathing in the chest? Or am I just half breathing? And, you know, am I, you know, it's just kind of being consciously aware of that, you know?
I've been doing the breathing a lot lately as well.
Good. Yeah. And it's kind of like, you know, we can do a lot of fancy stuff and get quantum and look at devices and all that, but just basic breathing can go a long way in creating a different energetic feeling in the body.
Yeah.
We're producing a lot of energy actually through breathing. We think, you know, based on our unconditional, you know, conditioned mind that, oh, we're just getting oxygen and then we spit out some CO2 and that's how it works. Like, no, there's a lot more going on with every breath as it relates to energetics and hydration and all kinds of stuff. So, because the air is just a water vapor essentially. So we're always in water. It's in a vapor state in the ether. So our lungs actually even consume water and we hydrate the body even by breathing. So, you know, and that's different in different areas, right? Some places are much more humid. Humidity is just more vapor, water vapor in the air.
Yes.
And right here in California right now, it's very dry. It's my throat being all jacked up. It creates where it's a lot easier to get dried out and not be able to create that moisture that you need in the air. So the other thing was, like, I'm a big fan of Wim Hof and his breathing techniques, and you can use his Wim Hof method app. It's a free app.
Yeah, I trained with Wim Hof last year in February.
Yeah.
And since then, I've been using his method. And yeah, actually, I'm at 5-minute retention.
Oh, dude, I love that. Yeah, I saw you posting. It's awesome. Yeah, I think I got to about 3.5 minutes so far. So.
Yeah, Wim Hof is cool. I think I'll actually be going back this year.
So cool. Yeah. And so what I'm starting to do now, is use my portable structured water device. And when I got the device originally, and obviously I'm friends with the inventor Clayton now. He's like, yeah, you can breathe through it, so you can breathe in structured air. So I'm going to combine the Wim Hof method with the portable structured water device, taking those 30 breaths through the device, so that it's sort of like an opportunity to create a quantum solution around improving every breath. And hey, if I'm doing the breathing practices through Wim Hof, how can I enhance that? One way could be to breathing structured air through the water device, the portable water device that I'm showing there in the picture. And then lastly, now that I'm consuming plasma GANs and I have access to the GANs water, they recommend that you get a water bong that you would normally smoke, marijuana or some other thing through, or a hookah pipe, and put that GANs water in the bong and then breathe the air through the bong, so that you're actually, and again, that could be even combined with Wim Hof's breathing techniques, right? Where you're breathing GANs water, plasma GANs water or air, while doing his technique. So these are all things that I'm kind of working on to test, so that I can.
The portable structured water device, which one is that? Is that like something like the Aquafy device that Sevan is still working on?
No, I'm not sure. I'm not tapped in really well on the tech and what he's doing with that device and what the outcome's supposed to be. This device actually, this guy Clayton Nolt invented it. He studied water for about 40 years. He worked for the government and stuff. And a few decades ago, I think he came up with this product, and he's advanced it.
Okay, it's a structured water device you were telling me about.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And and I think I've posted links and discount codes and stuff for.
Yeah.
It's the same device, right? It's the portable device, and they have devices that you can put on your house, so your whole house is structured. But I like the portable because I can pass water through it, or I pass juice or soup or whatever liquid I can pass through it, and obviously I can use it as a breathing device too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very versatile in that way. And so these are kind of the things I'm doing in the air arena, and obviously as we talked about, when it comes to the free energy space, there's tons of energy in the air, in the ether, that still is to be harvested. We didn't even get into that in terms of harvesting the ether for free energy.
Another technique in terms of breathing that I've learned last year is with Sven. I don't know if you know Sven.
Yeah, I do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we don't live so far from each other actually. So I've done some sessions with him, and it's like the shadow, the breathing shadow cleanse technique, which was like also very, very powerful. Like doing that when the sun is black, on the black sun, like 13 days on a row, at I think 5 or 20 to 6 in the morning. But it just depends on the time, like when is the sun the blackest at your side. So me doing that and also doing the Wim Hof, I'm coming up with some ideas on how to actually create, let's say, different breathing, like different variations of breathing exercise, like utilizing the Wim Hof technique, but then combining that with how should I call it? Like we have this I don't know what the exact word is in English. Like we have this vibrations or these sounds like on different frequencies, right? So like on a certain frequency it's like healing, on another frequency it's like ascension, on another frequency it's like like just you have all these different vibrations on different frequencies that actually does something to energize the body, right?
No question.
Yeah, so the thing that I'm thinking about like creating is also like creating like a type of app just like Wim Hof's own, but that you have all these options that you can tap into this specific method of breathing, but then you're then accompanied with the specific frequency that correspond the thing that you're looking for. Are you looking for healing? Are you looking for ascension and things like that? So
Almost like almost like a rife frequency.
yeah, so
yeah,
you can choose. So and then also it can also be something that you have, like you can also record your own voice and your own intentions, and so that when you then go into the breathing, then you have your own vibration of your own voice and your own intention that is being like played back to you as a mantra, for example.
No, it totally makes sense to me. Totally.
Yeah, so that's also like one of my.
Can't believe that hasn't been done yet. Yeah, it's awesome.
Well, I don't know if that's been done yet, but I just had that revelation when I was doing all these breathing techniques last year, at the ending of last year. So I just wrote them down, like, okay, this is so definitely, and I also had the training of how to create your own app and things like that. So I'm like, okay, when I'm ready for all that, that's definitely a project I'm going to bring to fruition.
Yeah, I love that.
So we can all come together and do and like share ideas on all this stuff. Totally. That's why I love all these things that you're sharing.
Awesome.
All makes sense.
Give me just 1 second.
Yeah. Speaking of the devil.
Okay, yeah. So that's kind of what I'm playing around with right now with the air, and I'm waiting for my bong to show up so I can start breathing in the plasma GANs through the bong. So.
Are you showing something? Because your camera is off.
Oh no, I was just going back to the slide that we're talking.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I got back into the water stuff. I'm not sure what part of the water you stepped into, but
yeah. So I've already heard, like me and you already had a chat on the juicing group back and forth about the structured water and the rife. There you explained the GANs, that it was something sitting at the bottom of the bottle, and then the rife device. Yeah. So you showed that, yeah. So now the rife device, I don't know what that is, but I think I can look it up on Google.
Yeah, just a brief on the rife device. And really the rife devices aren't really designed to work with water, but it's one way that you can actually structure water. You don't have to do it through, these devices that I'm using. You can actually use a 528 hertz frequency to also structure water. So I just mentioned that's possible. But generally that comes from a guy named Dr. Rife from the 1930s, who actually figured out that you could, if you figured out the vibration or the frequency that viruses and quote unquote disease were based on, you could send the same frequency back to it and it would slowly, if not immediately, destroy it. And they basically, destroyed his life and got rid of that technology because it would heal the world. They can't make money off that. So these devices now exist again. And I have the Live Wires one that you can hook to your laptop. It's relatively inexpensive. And so it's a great device for, healing and overall energetics. You can use it, 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day.
What's the cost of such a Rife device?
I think the Live Wires, I think I paid a few $100, so maybe $200 to $300 for it. The like the picture of the Spooky 2 device with the little ghost on it, those can range from $1,000 to $3,000, the bigger units. But I don't really see a need for the big units. And the beauty is that there's frequencies on YouTube and the Live Wires, they give you the software with all the frequencies on it too. So it's gotten really a lot less expensive than it used to be, where you could only get these $2,000 and $3,000 machines.
Okay.
And a lot of people that got cancer and all these other horrible diseases, they that understood the power of Rife frequencies. $2,000-$3,000 is a cheap investment for them. But
yeah, of course. That's why I find it so important to get off this this spiral of always paying, let's say, a lot of monies in our everyday environment, and just
over and over and over and over again. Yeah.
I have all this thing, everything you're talking about, bro. This is the things that really interest me. These are the type of things that I will spend or I will invest my money in every day without any thought of oh, is this something interesting? Yes or no? These are the type of things that I find that it actually makes sense to invest the money in, So
totally, yeah. And even with the GANs, you can make your own GANs, but I mean, I invested $200 to get the 4 different GANs that you see in the picture there, and that lasts forever. Literally, I might need a little bit more topped off, but it just stays there and keeps powering the water. So these are essentially pretty much one-time investments that you can make in some of this stuff. Just looking at these pictures here, between the structured water device, the little Rife machine, and some, plasma GANs, you're on your way to complete healing for less than $1,000, and you've got the tools that you can use forever.
Yeah. And bro, let me just take a picture of this. Another question that I want to ask, with 2 questions, but the first one is I don't know, what do you think of cymatics and being in a space where you can actually blast frequencies to your body on that level?
I'd say sign me up.
Pardon?
I'd say sign me up for that deal. It's super it's everything, right? It's the same thing with the Dome Home and creating resonance,
Yeah, because that's working with the sound. Yeah. So then my second question would be in terms of how you've structured all these different I don't know how to call it, sectors of manifestation, because it's sectors of sectors of manifesting your being to a higher version of yourself, right? So what is the plan, or how do you have a way that you intend for us to work together on this, or is it just we're bringing all this up and then anybody who has an input should contribute to it, or how are you seeing it, or how are you guys seeing it?
Yeah, just like I built a quantum roundtable with all these experts, like, again, it's a roundtable for me. I'm just bringing this to the table so that we can start to have conversation around it. Like, I love the idea that you have already conceived this idea of like tapping into how we can get more specific with the breathing technique to create a specific energy or frequency or healing technique in the body. Like that to me is super exciting. And so, whether it's people start, testing some of the stuff that I'm presenting for themselves or bringing new ideas to it, or how for each of these 9 areas, what about this, Justin? And, we can tap into some other free energy stuff that I haven't even talked about yet. Like, this to me is like the first call of many where we can come back to the table and say, hey, I'm another week into Plasmagans, next Saturday, I'll do another call. Right. And we're just like, hey, I'm getting to 5 PM before my body says, yeah, I'm hungry now. Like, kind of just having these conversations where we can say, there are other people going to say, well, in a week's time, I didn't go run off and buy Plasmagans just because Justin said it's kind of cool or it's helpful. And so we can get more people kind of going down the road and then introducing their own findings of new products and things that I've never heard of. That's kind of my goal, is like, I'm only in my own little bubble here and I do a lot of research and stuff, but there could be a lot of cool things that I'm just don't even know about yet that need to go to the table.
There are a lot of things because, and it's just through the connection, when we start connecting with each other, that we start like seeing, because like a lot of the things that you just like showed here, like the Plasmagans and the Rive device, like for me, these are all like very, very new. I'm like, okay, definitely every day with everything new that I learned, I just discovered that, oh, I know so little, like every day I literally learn new stuff.
Yeah.
And it just tells me like, oh, you still know so little. And
that's the beauty of the journey.
Yeah. It's actually,
and like even on the topic of Plasmagans, like, I'm literally, call it 4 weeks into diving into the gnosis on it. There might be 6 other people that have even better solutions than even Kesh himself is selling. Kesh is off doing like trying to change, working with the Chinese government to do these huge projects. Like, he's not really focused on what the little guy's trying to do with this stuff. Whereas there are others that, like there's a husband-wife team, and the husband just passed away. They're older. She has a great YouTube channel, her and her husband, that talk about the plasma all the time. And he was a doctor and knew how to create all these, the picture with the plasma energy solution. And I think that's their website, plasmaenergysolution.com. They make this like power station, and they're using, they're creating all kinds of GANs of minerals and amino acids and, all the stuff that, so like there's got to be other players even in those spaces that are doing stuff that we're not even aware of yet, that, now that I've planted the seed with all you guys, you're going to go run and find, so don't assume that I already know anything about even these topics I've brought up. Let's just come together. Maybe even next time we can, instead of doing presentation style, we can use the presentation maybe as a guide, but really like, let's jump over into a browser and start looking at different websites. And, like right now, even for, let me stop the share. Let's see here. Let me bring up the browser. Let's see here. Exit out of here. Okay. Let me get the share going again. Let's see. Share. Let's do this one. So like now you can see my screen. Okay. So this is the website that sells the super caps, right? So like we could just have a browser open with a bunch of tabs, and going through different websites and stuff. And we can, you could share your screen. Like that to me is like the next step on the next call is like, let's now talk about some of these devices and these concepts and these ideas.
What device was this one again?
So this is the super caps. This is the
caps.
This is the briefcase version. So again, under $500 to get the whole setup of the one module in a briefcase that you could easily carry with you in your car or whatever, that already has the plugs and everything hooked up for it, or you can buy, you can buy the actual, the module itself for a couple $100. I think $200 or $300 for the yeah. So $285, you can get this graphene supercat module, which again, they can be stacked together to create more power if you need them.
And how does this device recharges itself?
You hook it up to a power source for 5 to 10 minutes and it recharges.
That's it.
That's it. It's for 72 watt hours of power.
It's amazing.
It's phenomenal. I mean, and literally this guy, I mean, I was just watching his YouTube video about a free energy magnetic wheel that he's been working on.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end, he started talking about this, and he literally just started selling this product. I mean, probably, weeks old. So
Wow.
stuff's coming,
Yeah, there's also another, I'm gonna share the link in the chat, then you can open it up.
Cool. But yeah, this is kind of where my head is going with the next call, is like we come back, all of us, with, different links and stuff. Like, let's check it out. Let's talk about this together, because
Yeah.
like even this module, I bet I haven't, even in my mind, I've tried to come up with all the different ways that I feel like, well, if I didn't have an outlet in my apartment, how could I use these to accomplish the same thing,
Mm-hmm. Oh, let's see if that.
It's like, for me, maybe I spend $100 a month on my electric. So, a lot of people that are in big homes and running the air conditioner or the heater all the time, like they're looking at $500 and $600 electric bills. But then you start looking at this and you're saying, well,
This
maybe
makes more sense.
I mean, I can make a one-time investment and probably offset that. Like maybe I could power this with maybe I could power my air conditioner with just these things.
Yeah, definitely. I know. I have solar panels.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, that works. But having something like this will definitely, because I still need to like build my garage.
Mm-hmm.
So having something like this will definitely be handy in such places.
Yeah, and that's kind of like, he used that as a comparison where he's like, yeah, similar to the chargers you would put on a cordless drill or a saw that you use the cordless battery on.
Yes.
These are very similar to those in terms of, they're generally 72 watt hour, lithium ion storage, but they take freaking hours to charge them up. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And if you have solar panels, like the solar panels could just charge these easily.
Yeah.
Super fast.
It can be made in such a way that when it's charged, then it automatically stops charging, that it doesn't overcharge, right?
Yeah, I would assume that is built in, because that's just standard stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Did you drop something in the chat?
Well, I'm still here looking for it.
Oh,
It was something with key. Okay. I remember it's YouTube. It was a YouTube channel, but it was also a website. Yeah, just give me 1 second. I have a lot of links up here, bro. So I need to like restructure everything.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, that's the key, is like within those 9 areas that I talked about in the presentation, if we can bring back links in different areas, so we can like, start exploring and thinking about.
Yeah, I'm gonna use this stroke, because I was taking notes as you were going through the slides. So I'm actually going to use this to restructure all the information that I have.
Oh, great.
So that in this way, whenever we're talking about a certain, let's say, for example, we dive into education or into food or something, and if I have anything on that, I can just share, even if like everybody knows about it, then it's already like reaffirmed that the whole hive is up to date, right?
Yeah, maybe what I'll do, if this makes sense from your perspective, or you have a better idea, maybe I'll make a Word document that lists these 9 sections, and we can just drop in. Maybe we can put our name next to it so we know who to reference on who dropped the link. we can just
Yeah.
drop links into each of those areas on a document.
Yeah, that will make actually a lot of sense.
Then we come in at the next call, like quantum leaped into already having it organized, and we can go through it all.
I found what I was looking for. Chi coil. Let me see. Chi coil. Yes, this is it. So let me go back to home, and I'm gonna send you the link. We can chat. Okay, there you go. So check this out.
Okay.
Like I just literally just knew about this like 3 days ago from a friend of mine. He's not in Secret Energy, but I always like mastermind with him, and he's also like a lot into personal development and also like things with energies and so.
Oh yeah, I can already see how this works. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like changing the negative vibrations and energies that are being given out from our cell phones,
Mm-hmm.
and like turning it into something that is like actually protecting us or healing.
Yep.
Yeah, I found this very, very interesting. I haven't like really looked at it, but I just found it interesting enough to like getting into my into one of the things that I have to take some time and dive into it and maybe purchase it and just test it out for myself.
Yeah.
That's also do with self-elevation. So
yeah, this is beautiful. Yeah, this is exactly what I'm looking to tap in and find, because one person can't find it all. So
yeah, So so success and abundance it never stands alone, right?
exactly.
Yeah. And you mentioned about how do you call it? You mentioned about quantum mastermind or something.
I have a quantum roundtable that I built. Yeah.
Well, what was that about? Do you want to tell me more about that?
Yeah. So if you know anybody that has a high amount of expertise in some of these particular areas, such as permaculture, free energy, water, air, like real scientists and smart people that actually want to co-create quantum solutions for humanity or Mother Nature, like those are people I'm recruiting for that group.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a group that I'm opening to just everybody to, although I'm recording it and I'd be willing to share recordings with people. It's really about really finding experts in their own field that, really haven't, want to co-create, but they've kind of been compartmentalized because they just focused on their own stuff like most of us have for many years.
Well, it's very funny you say this because guess what? A few weeks back, I think like 3-4 weeks ago, when I was flying from Germany back to Belgium, there was this girl sitting next to me in the plane, and I got into a conversation with her, and she's like, and I was like, yeah, what do you do? And she's like, yeah, I'm a scientist. Like, I'm like a real scientist, somebody who like really, really study quantum physics and things like that. She was like, yeah. And we just exchanged numbers, and I was like, okay, because it was her first time in Belgium. And she was like, I just told her like, okay, if you need anything, like, because she didn't like really like know people, I was like, okay, if you need anything, like, just let me know. If I can help, I'll be glad. So I might just give her a call and tell her about this if she's interested. Then
oh yeah, please do. Please connect me with people like that. If she's interested. The key, I think, is because what happens a lot of times with these super smart people is that they bring an ego to the table, and we can't have that, right? So they have to be somebody that's saying, I'm here to co-create. I'm not trying to, even though we may monetize some of the solutions, that's not why they're coming to the table. They're coming to the table to create quantum solutions and collaborate with other experts and share their gnosis with them, and be open enough to not believe they know it all.
Yeah, I guess in terms of that you have like a specific guideline on how to like actually lay out the rules of how you guys interact with each other.
It's pretty free flow right now because we just got it started. But I think the key word is when you talk to them, like, he built a quantum roundtable so that experts can co-create quantum solutions for humanity and Mother Earth together. I think that if you don't align with that, then it's perfect. It's not a place for you,
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
fine.
Yeah.
That's my filter right now,
Yeah. So if she like, I'm gonna lay out the message like that, and if she clicks, I'm happy to help out, bro. In that way.
Please do, yeah. Because there have been some experts who I have a ton of respect for, who have gone into groups like that in the past, and they're using the past to dictate how this is going to play out.
Yeah.
Who have said like that's their problem, that's the reason they're not getting involved, even though they're highly technical and they have a lot to bring to the table, is because they've had past experiences where they've tried to do that, and there's been a lot of ego and stuff involved that gets in the way of what the real purpose was. So. But yeah, that's something I just started in late December that we've done one call and we're going to do another call next week. So, it's still early and there's only a handful of people on board, but there's a lot of experts out there that could bring a lot to the table if they resonate.
Yeah, I'll just keep an ear on that. So if I know anybody on this matter, like I can link them.
That'd be excellent. Yeah. Yeah, this is exactly. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and create a Word document that we can all access and edit, and just start dropping links based on these 9 sections, so that so our next call can just be super. We just keep moving it forward in a quantum way,
And bro, I don't know. Do you know, like, what are your thoughts on the COPPA bill?
What?
The COPPA bill. The bill that is like being passed on, that was passed on the YouTube on monetization and making, like, on YouTube there's like a new law that from 2020 January the 1st, that's like you have to like if you have like a YouTube channel, you have to like verify if your content is for children or not.
Yeah.
And if you say it's for children, then you will not have no monetization options. But if you say like it's not for children and they flag it as for children, then you get a fine and things like that. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts are that, one, I don't leverage these platforms to support myself. So fortunately, I don't really care. And just in general, I wouldn't be relying, a lot of people have relied on these platforms to get their message out, as well as try and monetize it. To me, I just, this is all stuff. I'm in the advertising marketing space, so I've spent millions of dollars in Facebook advertising, and I know how these platforms work, and now they're very agenda driven, right? So, really, it's not, at this point, they're so big, they don't even care about the money. The money is just an excuse to delete you when they want to. So, so to me, it's just,
don't you see it like history repeating itself in such a way that the platform has been there like to gather information, and now they want to suppress the flow of information?
Sure. I mean, I think that just like with anything in the duality, what we're seeing is extremes on both sides. Like, you could say, well, YouTube and Google and these people that run that show are evil beings, and they are, but at the same time, I use that platform every day to expand my consciousness and my awareness. So, I'm just going to I don't use their platform to try and survive in my life. Although, with Facebook ads, I still have clients and stuff that some of my businesses are based on running ads on those platforms. So, I do have some connection to these platforms from a monetization standpoint. But at the end of the day, I don't really, if your whole thing is based on somebody else's platform, you're in trouble already.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I'm just like I'm not looking at it from a monetization standpoint. I'm just looking at it from an elevation standpoint, in terms of like, hey, we have all these people coming out now with information in terms of how to elevate yourself, or how to like even do things that get you out of the 9 to 5 rat race.
Yeah.
Then now you have this type of things happening in such a way that the bigger picture is just that it's a suppression of
The whole paradigm is dissolving quickly. I think that in general that, I mean, I've even seen truthers and stuff that are getting savvy so that they don't get flagged by the algorithms, or, you know, so they don't get manually reviewed. I mean, they have like pictures of cats in their videos and they just don't use certain words when they're talking about stuff because, and so I think that I think that anything they're going to do to filter, like they can't, they're not going to just turn off YouTube one day. So they, right. So they still need it all to even exist and survive and to extract all the money they are from that system. They need it to stay on. And so I think that in general, like, although they use this like, oh, we're, you know, December 10th, we're changing the terms of service and we can delete you for, the reality is like, they don't even have the manpower to try and, you know, keep an eye on all this stuff that's going to flow out. And so I'm not really all that concerned about it, because unless they're going to turn off their own platform and disappear into the abyss, which you're not going to do until we shut it down ourselves, then, you know, it's going to continue to be an outflow of people sharing all this gnosis that they've had forever, and they're not going to be able to filter it fast enough to keep up with it.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah. And then, you know, even if you don't get a lot of visibility with your videos or whatever in the algorithm, like that stuff's going to get shared enough. If it's powerful enough stuff, I mean, as more people wake up, it's going to reach people through organic posts and emails and everything else, you know, and reach a lot more people faster. We won't need to rely on the algorithms as much to get to the information.
Yeah, that's true.
And then obviously this, you know, the more people, which I'm sure there's plenty of other people doing what I'm doing here in their own way, you know, where we can just come together, even whether it's face to face or virtually, and start to connect and share. And if we all have the same intention, then we're naturally, the universe is going to deliver us every bit of information we need in that moment to make these quantum changes, you know?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I never like really looked at it like that deep. But yeah, you make a lot of sense, like the way you put it.
Yeah. So it's, again, you know, as I said, when I came on, and maybe you didn't hear it, the new earth is already here. We're just not fully tapped into the frequency and vibration of new earth. And by us kind of going through this process and kind of forgetting about some of those things that you just mentioned and assuming, hey, yeah, you know, the other end of the spectrum is going to do what they're going to do. But that, I mean, I understand that. That doesn't even affect me anymore as it did in my past. Like, I don't really care what these people do, what they're going to try and do or whatever. I'm focused on creating quantum solutions, and I'm going to do that with other like-minded beings, and I don't really care what
quantum solutions makes a lot of sense. My thing that I'm doing is self-elevation, like creating systems and content through self to help others to elevate themselves as well.
Love it, brother. Love it. So I'll go ahead and get a doc put together that I can share with everyone, and then we can kind of, you know, start doing a brain dump there. And then once we come to our next call next week, then we'll have a lot more we can bring to the table, and we'll just keep moving it forward like that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing. And I hope you have a splendid weekend, brother.
You too, brother. I'll see you on the other side.
See you on the other side. Wholeness.
Wholeness, brother. Peace.
Peace.